Be going online shortly. Thank you. Thank you, House. Right, so good morning, members, officers, and any members of the public who thank you for joining us, and to anybody who's joining us on the live stream. Welcome to this meeting of South Cambridgeshire District Council Planning Committee. My name is Anna Bradnam, and I am the chair of this committee. And I'm going to ask the members to introduce themselves. So I'll start with the Vice Chair, Peter Fane.
Good morning, Peter Fane, Shelford Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Sandford.
Good morning, Chair, everyone. Peter Sandford, one of the members for Caxton and Papworth Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Rickson.
Morning, Councillor James Rickson, Ward Member for Histon and Impington.
Thank you. Councillor Redrop.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, everyone. I'm Councillor Lisa Redrop and I represent the Harston and Comberton Ward.
Thank you. And Councillor Jackson Wood.
Hello, good morning, Chair. Good morning, everybody. It's Will Jackson Wood, one of the members for the Shelford Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair. Councillor Eileen Wilson, the local member for Cottenham.
Thank you so much. And Councillor Heather Williams.
Heather Williams, I represent the Mordens Ward.
Thank you very much. Right, okay. We've also got our officers with us. Which way shall I start? Well, let's start with Rebecca Smith.
Morning, I'm Rebecca Smith. I'm the delivery manager.
And we have the case officer with us. Oops, okay.
Good morning, Dominic Bush, Senior Planning Officer.
Thank you. And we have our legal officer observing today, who hasn't got a microphone, so I'll just say this is our new legal officer who is observing for today. Thank you. Thank you. And with me here is the legal officer who's working for us today on the committee. That's Vanessa Blaine.
Good morning, everyone. Vanessa Blaine, Legal Advisor to the committee.
Thank you very much. And Sarah Steed, who's our committee coordinator today.
Good morning, everyone.
Thank you. And we have officers who are producing the meeting. Habs PC is there, so thank you very much indeed. And I'll also add in, would you like to just fire up your microphone, Councillor Khan? And introduce yourself.
Yes. Hello, I'm Councillor Errol Khan and I represent the Harston and Comberton Ward.
Thank you very much. Right. So, those in the chamber are reminded that the meeting is being live streamed. By your presence here in the chamber and via video conference, you're deemed to have consented to being filmed and to the use of images and sound recordings for a webcast and archived recording. May I ask those who are joining us remotely to ensure that their camera and microphone remain off unless they are addressing the committee. If a member arrives after the start of an application or leaves the chamber once an application has commenced, they'll not be able to take any further part in that application, either by entering into the debate or questions of clarification of the vote. Or the vote, sorry. So, item 2 is apologies, and we know we've received apologies from Councillor Dr. Toomey Hawkins. Would you like to go through the others?
Chair, yes, we've also had apologies from Councillor Martin Khan, and Richard Williams had advised that he's running a bit late, so he'll join us when he's able to. And Will Jackson Wood is substituting for Toomey Hawkins.
Thank you very much. Okay, so item 3 is declarations of interest. Please would councillors advise if they have any declarations of interest and also identify which application their declaration relates to. So, Councillor Eileen Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. On the agenda item relating to Histon Road, Cottenham, that's agenda
Number 6.
item 6.
Yes.
I will be speaking as a local member, so I won't be taking part in the discussion or voting.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Anybody else? No? Can't see any other hands raised. Oh, Councillor Heather Williams.
It's just to do with a couple of items in agenda item 7, Chair, but it's not a decision-making item.
Okay, righto, thank you. So the next item, item 4, is the minutes, and these are the minutes of the meeting on the 12th of November. Does anybody have any matters of exactness that they wish to raise? I can't see any. So can I take it by affirmation that we agree those as a minutes as a true record of that meeting?
Agreed.
Agreed, thank you. Can I just borrow your pen? Thank you. And it's... Thank you. Right, okay, so those are signed off. Right, so we now move on to consider the planning applications. I'll clarify the process for the consideration of each planning application. So firstly, the case officer will give a brief introduction to the report. Then the committee may ask questions of clarification of the case officer. And then registered public speakers will be invited to speak, and they will have 3 minutes each, depending on the nature of their speaking, and I'll come to that in a minute. The committee may then ask questions of clarification of the case officer, and the committee will then debate the item. Public speakers are not permitted to take part in the debate. So at the end of the debate and the conclusion of any questions, providing there's no alternative proposal, the officer recommendation will be read out, and I will request a proposer and seconder for the recommendation. I'll ask members to vote on the recommendation, and if a recommendation falls, an alternative proposal must be made, which will require a seconder and must then be voted on, and the voting will be recorded. So we move on to item 5, which is 20-02157/FUL, that's land rear of 33 Church Street, Gamlingay, and our Dominic Bush, is the senior planner, will present this report. Thank you, Dominic.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully you can all see the presentation and my laser pointer on the screen. So as you said, this application is at land to the rear of number 33 Church Street in Gamlingay, and is proposing the demolition of the existing commercial buildings and the erection of 4 new dwellings with associated car parking, amenity space and landscaping. Just some updates and amendments that followed the publication of the amendment sheet that's been circulated. So within the amendment sheet there was the changes to condition 9, which relate to the energy statement. That was changed to a compliance condition. There's also been one additional representation received in objection to the scheme. I believe they're speaking at the meeting today and will expand upon their comments in more detail, but they relate broadly to the impact upon neighbouring amenity, the housing mix and the access into the site, but these aren't considered to change the officer recommendation. There's also a unilateral undertaking required for the application as per policy GAM 8 of the Gamlingay Neighbourhood Plan. This will require legal instructions to be sent, which will be carried out if the officer recommendation is approved. And there is also an additional condition recommended regarding waste collection. The wording's on the screen. I won't read it all out, but I'll leave it up there for a minute for members to read. I can get that back up at the end if needed, but I'll move on for now. This is the location plan for the application. So the existing commercial building within the site are located within this area to the north here. And the access track into the site runs to the south towards Church Street, either side of the access onto Church Street. So you've got number 37, which is the pharmacy building to the right here, and the residential dwelling of number 33 to the left here. To the south of the application site, but west of the access, this footprint here is a previous commercial building which has permission granted for its demolition and replacement with 5 dwellings. Construction is underway on that, so that building's been demolished. There are a number of neighbouring residential properties surrounding the application site to the west here, to the north here, and to the east, all along here. The properties along Avenel's Way to the west and north are smaller single-storey dwellings. A lot of them have rear gardens that back onto the application site boundary here, whereas the properties to the eastern side of the site tend to be slightly larger, detached or semi-detached dwellings. And this is the GIS map of the site showing the relevant planning constraints. So the site outlined in red here, it's outside of almost entirely, but adjacent to the Gamlingay Conservation Area, which is this lilac area. The site is within an area of potentially contaminated land, which is the green hashed area, which is due to its previous uses. There's an area of TPO protected trees, which is this pink area here to the east of the site boundary. And number 33, which I talked about, the residential properties to the south of the site, is a building of local interest. This is the existing site plan for the application. So on the right-hand side, you can see the full site plan. Again, this building within the purple area is not within the application site of this application, but is was a commercial building. So this is the commercial building within this application site. You can see the proximity of its western and northern boundaries, especially to the boundary of the site. And on the left-hand side, I've zoomed this in a bit more. So the green measurements denote the distance between the elevation and the site boundary. So to the west of the site, it ranges from between 0.6 metres and 1.5 metres, and to the north it's between 3 and 4 metres. And then taking this to the rear elevations of the neighbouring properties, it ranges from between 6.4 metres to the west and 11.7, and to the north between 9.3 and 10.1 metres. And these are the existing elevations of the commercial building within the site. So elevation 8 here is the western elevation of the building, which I just talked about previously, almost abuts the site boundary. And then elevation 7 is the northern elevation. So the height of the existing buildings, it's not particularly clear, but it's approximately 5.1 metres to the eaves of this taller portion and 6.8 metres to the ridge. Officers consider it's therefore clear that this building has caused a certain level of harm to neighbouring amenity in the current situation. This is the proposed site plan for the application. Just to clarify again, the buildings within the purple line here aren't part of this application, but show the layout of the adjacent previously approved site. The coloured in portion of the plan to the right-hand side is the site plan of this application. The plan's also rotated 90 degrees clockwise, just in case members were confused about that. So yeah, there's 2 detached dwellings within the application site, either side of a pair of semi-detached dwellings with a turning head proposed at the end of the access road. The 5 car parking spaces proposed to the front of the dwellings are uncovered, with 3 car parking spaces proposed within the carport structure to the north of the site. Again, the general layout of the site and form of development follows that within the adjacent southern site, with dwellings on the western side of the access road. And there's also 2 visitor car parking spaces proposed on the eastern side of the access. I've just zoomed in on the same portion of the site showing the relationship between the proposed development and the same neighbouring properties that I covered previously. So you can see, perhaps make out the dashed line within this left-hand plan is the outline of the current commercial building. So you can see the increased distance between the rear elevations of the proposed dwellings and the properties to the west. So to the west specifically, they range from between 12.64 metres elevation to elevation and 22 metres, and to the north it's 9.1 metres. So the dwelling within plot 9, which is this northernmost, is slightly closer to the boundary, but because of the pitched roof sloping away from the boundary, its impact would be reduced. And this section on the right-hand side here just gives you an idea of how that would look. So this person here is standing at the rear elevation of one of the neighbouring properties to the west. It shows you the height of the western elevation of the existing commercial building right up to the boundary and how that would compare to the rear elevation of the dwelling within plot 6, so that's the southernmost of the proposed. I'll now just run through the plans and elevations for each of the proposed dwellings. So firstly, you've got plot 6 here. You can see the elevations show a relatively simple traditional appearance of the dwelling with front and rear facing gables.
Could you just clarify which position on the site that is, please?
Yeah, plot 6. So I'm going from south to north. This is the southernmost of the 4 proposed. And yeah, internally this has 4 bedrooms. So plot 7 and 8, so these are the middle 2 pair of semi-detached dwellings. They're identical, so it's one set of plans for both. Again, traditional simple design, that these have side-facing gables as opposed to front-facing gables for the detached dwellings. They're also slightly smaller and 3-bed units as opposed to 4. And finally, the northernmost plot 9, again, a very similar design to plot 6 with the front and rear facing gables. So this property has 4 bedrooms, meaning in total this application is proposing 2 3-bed and 2 4-bed properties. And overall, if you consider the application site in addition to the southern site, although they are in different ownerships now, that would make a total of 3 2-bed properties, 4 3-bed properties, and 2 4-bed properties. That should say 2 2-bed properties, sorry. No, 3 2-bed properties, 4 3-bed properties, and 2 4-bed properties. It has been raised that this doesn't meet the housing mix set out in policy GAM 1 of the Gamlingay Neighbourhood Plan, which suggests or requests the provision of smaller 1 and 2-bed dwellings where appropriate. Officers consider that in this case, where the principle of development is considered to be acceptable, it's not really a reason to refuse this application based on the housing mix. And the Gamlingay Housing Needs Assessment also does mention the need for the potential future need for larger dwellings once the families within the village require more space. Now just to move on to the street scene and details of the carport. So at the top of this slide, you can see the appearance of the dwellings. This is taken as if you were standing along the access looking to the west. You can see, again, the similarity in appearance of the proposed dwellings in comparison to those approved in the southern site. And then to the bottom is just the elevations and plan of the carport. So it's a relatively lightweight timber frame structure to the north of the site. Just some photos of the site. So these are taken mostly from outside the site looking in. This is from along the footpath which runs to Avenel's Way. This dwelling here is one of the previously approved dwellings within the southern site, which is under construction. And you can see the southern gable end of the existing commercial building. And hopefully this gives you some idea of the relationship between the existing commercial building, and this is one of the single-storey properties along Avenel's Way, so the proximity of the 2 buildings is quite clear. And this is taken from slightly further along Avenel's Way, looking to the southeast. So this is the other northern gable end of the proposed commercial building. Again, this is a conservatory within the rear garden of one of the Avenel Way properties, and again shows you the proximity of the existing commercial building to those neighbouring dwellings. This is a photo taken from within the access of the site looking outwards, so this was taken before that southern building was under construction. Just gives you again an idea of the proximity of the neighbouring properties to the existing commercial building. And finally, this is from along the access looking to the north. So this is a slightly older image, but it gives you an idea of the width of the access running the full length of the site. So this is the southern commercial building, which has now been demolished, and you can just about make out the gable of the commercial building within this application site there. And just to sum up, consultee comments. So with the exception of the Parish Council, none of the technical consultees have raised any objection to the proposal. Some are subject to conditions, but these have been discussed in detail in my report. And then overall, the development would result in the loss of an identified local employment site within the neighbourhood plan and would cause minor harm to neighbouring amenity as set out by the Environmental Health Officer. However, it's considered that through the marketing undertaken, there is no demand for the continued employment use, and the level of impact upon neighbouring amenity is not considered to justify refusal of application, especially when considering the existing buildings within the site. And therefore, the provision of 4 homes within the development framework is such that offers a recommendation is for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Dominic. It's really helpful clarification and useful photographs, including what we would have seen at the site visit last week. So that's great. So, has anybody got any questions of clarification for the case officer? Thank you. So, Councillor Rickson, and then Councillor Sandford, and then Councillor Heather Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the presentation, Dominic. You showed a section that was through plot 6. Do we have in the information a section through, I would assume it would be plot 7, so the property adjacent to that at all? Just to show.
We don't. This was the only section that was provided with the application. Plot 7 and 8 would be closer. I think it's between 2 and 3 metres closer to the shed boundary, but still significantly further away from that boundary than the existing commercial. But I don't have the section provided, I'm afraid.
And does plot 7 have windows at first floor that overlook directly into the neighbouring property?
Sorry, I should have clarified that. All of the 4 dwellings do have western-facing windows, but none of them are habitable rooms. So they are all conditioned to be obscure glazed. There's no planning reason why they can't be obscure glazed. So subject to those conditions, they wouldn't overlook the neighbour.
Thank you.
Councillor Peter Sandford.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation, Dominic. I noticed the contaminated land officer raised no objections, but could you tell us what the site was previously used for?
So I don't know exactly the use, but it was a form of light industrial use. The site has been disused for a fair amount of time now, I think. So it's owing to potential historic uses of the site has led to the site becoming potentially contaminated. But there's conditions recommended and attached as the contaminated land officer has requested to sort of mitigate any impact resulting from that contamination.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Heather Williams.
Thank you. Mine's in relation to one of the slides where it shows sort of the parking arrangements. I don't think it's easy. And I brought it up on my screen because I find it a little bit easier there. On one of them, it sounds really bizarre, but it's like there is a car, but it's very faint, like it's sort of behind. I just wonder whether there is a... So I'm looking at the bottom right-hand side. It just to kind of, if we could just have it...
That's a triple... In the carport, is it?
Well, they're all meant to be in the carport, Chair, actually, but if you look, one's really faint, and I didn't know if that was meant to symbolise something or not. It just wasn't very clear. And maybe if we could have it displayed and just to be really clear, because parking seems to be a key concern for local residents, just to double check exactly the parking arrangements and whether that, because some places that look like spaces don't actually have sort of cars drawn in them as well when it comes to sort of beige, rougey beige area.
It's the far northeastern corner of the site, isn't it? So there are 3 spaces, aren't there, in the under the carport?
Sorry, yeah. So I believe the carport is what you're referring to.
No, bottom right.
Yeah, sorry, my mouse is a different place.
Yeah, I've asked for all of the areas that are in that sort of rougey colour, so that would include that section as well, because some have one's got...
I think they don't depict cars in all of the areas, but they're all parking spaces that are in that pink colour.
That's what I'm just would like the officers to clarify. It's just a bit of an odd way of the image.
Yeah, so there is a total of 8 car parking spaces proposed, so 3 within the carport and then 5 to the front of the dwellings. I see what Councillor Williams is saying. Within the carport, the 2, as you look at it, the topmost 2 cars here are slightly bolder than the car within the bottom space. I think that's just because of the number of lines overlapping within that building.
And I think the paler colour over the top is just indicating the carport.
Yeah, so there are 3 car parking spaces proposed within the carport. Yeah. arrived at the front of the dwellings.
Great. I see no further requests for clarification. Sorry? Oh, Councillor Eileen Williams. Go ahead. Sorry. Sorry. Councillor Eileen Wilson. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair.
I misheard the Vice Chair.
On page 23, paragraph 11.3 to 11.5, it refers to the marketing, the two phases of marketing of this site. The first, which was carried out between January and August 2020. I accept that the later marketing was well after COVID had taken place, but I just can't understand why it's possible to make the statement that the first phase of marketing between January and August 2020, that COVID was not a factor in it not being sold. I just want to understand the reasoning behind that. Thank you.
If I can clarify that one, Chair. The previous application, which is on the front part of the site, originally when it was submitted, only had the initial set of marketing with it, and that's when we said that wasn't sufficient to meet the policy requirements and that it was during COVID, so could you submit some more marketing? So that's when the second lot of marketing was carried out. But that initial portion, although it was for the site as a whole, was related to the application on the front part of the site.
And also there are various letters, aren't there, on the portal about clarifying who had applied and what applications had fallen by the wayside and what had been deemed
yeah, that's part of the marketing information that was submitted, yes, Chair.
Okay, right. So I can't see any further questions for clarification. So let's move on to the speakers. So we start off with, just to clarify, we have Objector Giuseppe Barischi, and he would like his photographs to be displayed while speaking. Then we have the supporter of the applicant, which is the applicant's agent, and then we have the parish council representative. So let's start off with Mr. Giuseppe Barischi. So you have 3 minutes, Mr. Barischi. So take your time when you're ready.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Good morning. I would like to start by showing figure 2, please. Yes, here we see at the bottom the units, the plan of the proposed development site. Here we see the units 7 and 8. My property is to the east, facing these two houses. At the top, we see what the new houses would look like, each of them having 3 windows on the first floor. I'm here because I have already expressed great concern about overlooking and loss of privacy from the first floor windows of plots 7 and 8. My concerns intensified after reading the planning application report, which in section 2013 states, and I quote, "The separation distance and the boundary treatments provide a certain level of screening. The impact in terms of overlooking is not considered to be significant." Unfortunately, this statement does not accurately describe the actual situation, since, as I will show, there is no realistic level of screening and there is nothing breaking the view from the top of the windows of the new dwellings into my house. If you can now go to photo 3, please. Okay, this photo has been taken from, this is photo 3, is it? Yeah, the photo 3 shows it was taken.
Oh. Sorry. Sorry, that is the fire alarm test. The lights will carry on flashing, but we'll give you a little bit of extra time. Sorry, thank you, Mr. Barischi.
Thank you. Okay, well, photo 3 was taken from the bathroom window on the first floor of my house. We can see the existing buildings on the site, and the height of this window is will be similar to the height of the windows of the new building, and also the distance to the existing building will be similar to the distance to the new building. Can we go to figure 5, please? Okay, this is a photo taken from my living room on the ground floor. And we can see that at the top, perhaps you cannot see here, that the level of the new windows will be at the level of the roof of the existing building. And you can see there is a direct view into this, here it is. There's a direct view into the, my living room with basically no obstruction. We can look at the next photo, please. Okay, this photo was taken from my sitting room. Again, you can see this is where the windows is going to be. There's a direct line of sight into my sitting room without any screening whatsoever. We can look at the next photo, please. Yes, this photo has also been taken from the sitting room, and you can see there is this is where the windows are going to be. It is a direct line of sight into my sitting room without any screening whatsoever. I think this level of overlooking, not just from 1 or 2, but 6 windows, is not insignificant. It will be permanent and it will be there day and night. To conclude, I think I have no choice but to strongly object to this proposal. As I think it has clearly shown that this development results in a significant level of overlooking, a considerable loss of privacy, and which will have a severe detrimental impact on my amenity. I ask the committee to please consider the evidence presented today before making a decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Borowski, and thank you for providing the photographs, which is helpful to us. Thank you. So next we have Vicky Davis, who is the applicant's agent. Thank you. Again, you have 3 minutes. I'm sure you're familiar with that.
Thank you, Chair. I'm grateful for the opportunity to address you this morning. As has been said, I'm Vicky Davis from DLA Town Planning, and I am the applicant's agent. The officer's report considers the relevant matters in detail, and I would like to thank the officer for his helpful approach during the application process. There are just a few points that I would like to reinforce. The National Planning Policy Framework at paragraph 61 requires that to support the government's objective to significantly boost supply of homes, it's important that a sufficient amount and variety of land can come forward where it is needed. It continues at paragraph 73, stating that small and medium-sized sites can make an important contribution to meeting the housing requirement of an area, are essential for small and medium enterprise house builders to deliver new homes, and are often built out relatively quickly. The South Cambridgeshire Local Plan Policy S6 sets out the development strategy, and Policy S7 sets out that the Gambling Gate is a minor rural centre and residential development will be permitted within the development framework. This site is exactly where new housing should be provided, on a brownfield site within a sustainable settlement, surrounded by other residential development and well served by existing facilities. The loss of the employment use of the site has been fully explored and addressed in the report. However, it is worth mentioning that in the past there were complaints made by residents living close to the site about noise resulting from commercial activities. It is considered that the site is better suited to a residential use rather than uncontrolled commercial use. Concerns about the overdevelopment of the site have been raised by residents, but it is clear from the report that the density of the site is actually lower than the standards suggested in Policy H8, but this is acceptable given the constraints of the site. Concerns have also been raised about parking and traffic, but the scheme is entirely in line with the required parking standards and there is no objection from the Highway Authority. Furthermore, the commercial use is uncontrolled and thus there's no restriction on the number or size of the vehicles that could come and go from the site. The residential use would therefore be likely to result in a reduction in traffic movements. An assessment of the cumulative impact of development under construction on the southern part of the site and the application on the northern part is entirely reasonable. The assessment of the sites together still concludes that the proposals are acceptable and remain below the threshold for financial contributions, except for those towards new walking, cycling and horse riding infrastructure required by the neighbourhood plan, and a unilateral undertaking has been provided to the council to secure this contribution. Overall, the conclusion of the report before you is endorsed, with the benefits of the proposal clearly outweighing any harm. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just incidentally, before we have our next speaker, Habs, would you just kindly move that tub of antiseptic wipes from the table, which is slightly obscuring our view. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms Davis. And thank you. And the next speaker we have is the Parish Council representative. Can I check, is that Kirsten or Kristen? Kirsten Rayner, thank you. And you're the parish clerk. Thank you. Can I just have confirmation that you've got the approval of your parish council to speak on this matter?
I do.
Thank you.
Good morning. Parish Council would like to raise a few issues with you regarding this application. Is this proposal for 4 dwellings on this site delivering high quality places? That's referencing Chapter 5 of the local plan, and high quality homes reference Chapter 7 of the local plan. Is it consistent with HQ1 design principles, which states that all new developments must be of high quality design, responsive to its setting and compatible with its location? Does this development do this? 4 main points we'd like to raise. Number 1, housing density. It fails to meet the local plan density policy, H8. Amenity of existing residents. The report identifies temporary amenity harm through construction, but does not highlight permanent amenity harm from overlooking, loss of existing privacy, and noise from the proposed air source heat pumps, which was mentioned in the Environmental Health Report. Thirdly, the amenity of the new occupiers needs to be considered by you. Is it acceptable that a total of 14 windows have to be obscure glazed to reduce the harm to the amenity? That's 11 upstairs windows and 3 downstairs windows in 4 properties. New occupiers are proposed to have their permitted development rights removed, and that's in paragraph 2014, to provide suitable good design. There's insufficient visitor parking spaces, 19.3, and a cramped vehicular layout. The site backs onto a row of bungalows on 2 sides. Fourthly, there is not much reference in the report to the adopted Gamlingay neighbourhood plan adopted in 2022, and there's no reference to the Gamlingay design guide in 2020. In summary, the application does not comply with GAM4, supporting employment sites. This site is named in this policy. GAM1, the supply a mix of housing sizes, 1 and 2 bedroom in particular. The development started as a 2 and a 3 bedroom development. It's now a 3 bed and a 4 bedroom development, and fails to address Gamlingay's housing need as identified in Gamlingay's Housing Needs Survey, which is an evidential document to the neighbourhood plan. So HQ1, local plan. The proposal does not deliver a high quality design, as the amenity of future occupants is materially compromised, as well as the amenity from the existing residents surrounding the site. Please consider fully utilising the adopted neighbourhood plan and HQ1 and refusing this application, as it fails to deliver high quality homes for the district. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms Rayner, thank you. Right, so has anything that we've heard caused a question in your minds that you'd like to ask of the case officer? It has for me. I'd like clarification from the case officer about the, can I just confirm that the distance between the windows of the proposed new properties and existing properties meet the, can you just clarify if they meet the current guidelines for those distances?
Thank you, Chair. Yep, I'll just share my screen. So with regards to the properties to the north and west, I think I covered that in terms of the obscure glazing of the windows. This is in relation to the dwellings to the east of the site. So apologies, it might require a bit of maths, but the right-hand image shows the distance between the rear elevations of the neighbouring properties and the eastern boundary of the site, and then so you would add that distance, which is approximately 12.5 metres, to the distances on the left-hand image, which is the distance between the front elevations of the proposed dwellings and that same boundary to the east of the site. So on the left-hand image, the distance between the front elevations of plot 7 and 8 is between 16.1 and 16.9 metres, which when added to approximately 12.5 metres to the rear elevation of the neighbouring properties is such that the impact from overlooking is not considered to be significant or warrant a refusal.
Thank you. And also, can you just describe to us what sorts of rooms in plots 7 and 8 are required to have obscure glazing? What kinds of rooms are they?
I'll just get the plans back up. So as you look at the top right plan here, so the bottom windows are all eastern facing and won't be obscure glazed. The top windows would be obscure glazed, so it's
sorry, these are the ones facing the bungalows behind.
To the west, yeah. So 2 bathrooms and a staircase within plot 7 and 8. Did you want me to go through 6 and 9 as well?
Okay, so they're not bedrooms.
They're not habitable rooms.
Okay, right. Thank you. What about in the plot 6? There was an end. Plot 6, there was an yes, the gable end of the building faces.
Yeah, so plot 6, one of the windows within the master bedroom would be obscure glazed, but there'd still be an unobscure glazed window within that master bedroom.
To the other side?
Yes, to the side.
Okay.
And then with plot 9, again, the same situation. So one of the rear windows to the master bedroom, but again, a side-facing window within the bedroom that wouldn't need to be obscure glazed because it faces into the site.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, any other questions of clarification for Dominic? Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. On the subject of the obscured glazed windows, is there any way of conditioning that they have to remain obscured and glazed, or could they be changed at any point under permitted development?
I got to the condition before Dominic did. Condition 14, it says that the glazing shall be thereafter retained in accordance with the approved detail, so it has to be retained as obscure glazed.
Thank you. Okay, I can't see any other questions of clarification. So, right, so we come to then debate. Sorry? Sorry, did you have a... I did look to you, Councillor Williams. If you wanted to ask something, do.
Thank you. So everybody else seemed to spot it, Chair. Can I just ask clarification around these sort of garden sizes in relation to plots 7 and 8? Because I see from paragraphs 20, 18 and 19, it says but that they won't be significantly overlooked by any neighbouring properties. Obviously, they're sort of back to back, and what representations we've had about people's gardens. So just wondering if we could have some more clarification about how officers have interpreted, because from when I'm looking at the plans, particularly those 2 plots, plots 7 and 8, the gardens look incredibly small in comparison to the size of the dwellings.
Thank you. Yeah, I will just get the plan up that specifically says the size of the garden. Sorry, I don't know off the top of my head. But in terms of the overlooking of the gardens of plot 7 and 8, the neighbouring dwellings to that side are single storey. So I'm content that with the existing boundary treatment, the fence that's along that boundary, there's no windows within the neighbouring properties that would overlook the proposed gardens for plots 7 and 8. The garden areas for 7 and 8 are stated as 70 metres squared, which I mean far exceeds the requirements for garden size within the local plan.
Can I just clarify? Garden sizes, but in the local plan, I'm trying to trawl through the local plan at the moment. In the policies, does it depend on the amount of bedrooms, or is it a standard garden size? So it's for the site, the amount of bedrooms that are in the property. That's what it's been linked to.
There is a greater requirement for larger properties, but this would still exceed the highest requirement in terms of garden sizes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So, Councillor Ariel Khan.
Yes, sorry, I had a point of clarification. Is plot 6 mentioned in conditions?
Have you got your microphone?
Sorry, yes. I've got a question about plot 6. Is plot 6 is also mentioned? Is plot 6 also mentioned in conditions to have its windows glazed on the western side?
I think it refers to all windows, does it not?
Because in the conditions it refers to plot 7, 8, and 9, but not plot 6.
It's not, so we'll add that. The condition needs amending to include plot 6 and the western facing windows within that plot.
Thank you for spotting that, Councillor Khan. Okay, so let's come to debate then. Would anybody like to make an observation or a comment or a declaration or anything? Oh, sorry. Yeah, if you could put up that slide, that's always helpful. If you could share that again, Dominic. Okay. So, well, if in the absence of anybody else wanting to start the debate, I will. So, obviously there's already a conversion of this employment land to residential at the front of the site, which we saw ongoing at the site visit last week. Actually, it's a very sustainable location in the village, close to lots of village shops and High Street, Church Street. And whilst I also have a few reservations about the parking manoeuvrability, I think it meets our terms. So I don't have any problems as far as I can see with this application. Does anybody else want to make a comment? Yeah. Councillor Williams?
I find his application quite frustrating because I think there's a lot of merit to it, but at the same time, I've still got something sort of niggling away that says it just doesn't sit right. And I think it comes down to the design. I think whilst we want to keep employment spaces, and I understand why Gamlingay Neighbourhood Plan would include that spot, if it hasn't been used for some time, there is also that need for housing, and that's the trade-offs that we end up in. And it is a sustainable location. There's much more facilities than other areas, and we know there's already permissions. So it does seem the right site for development. I do have concerns around the parking. I think the visitor bays will just end up as overspill parking, and then I fear that the passing place will then start getting filled up. But we don't have its policy compliance, so we couldn't rely on that for a reason for refusal. But I do think a different layout, and actually if the road went in the other direction, it could be much improved. And also, if the sheer footprint of these houses was smaller, I appreciate the plots are bigger, then you could make the gardens a bit bigger, which would then bring them further away from the properties. So I'll listen to members. It's not sitting right. I don't think it's the best design that can be achieved. I do have sympathy that HQ1 hasn't given. There is a better way to model this plot. While I appreciate that the principle of development there for this sort of property would be acceptable, but it's not sitting right, to be honest, Chair. I think a better plan could be achieved. And if you're going to lose an employment site, if you're going to take that away, then you really want to get the best out of it. And I'm not quite sure the applicants succeeded in that here.
Okay, thank you very much. I can see Councillor Martin Khan online. Can you just confirm, Councillor Khan, that you were here at the beginning of this application?
Yes. I think,
Great, okay. And
I'm only going to make a comment in any case because
excuse me, just before you go on, I just want to remind you that you won't be able to vote on this, but we're very keen to hear what you say, so do go ahead.
sorry, my comment simply is that to give my view on it, looking at it, obviously I can't vote. The comments that I would make is that there don't seem to be sufficient material grounds to refusal. I can understand the design concern, but the adjoining properties are very similar design, so that has sort of set precedent in terms of design. So you wouldn't really be able to stand on that. I can understand the concern about overlooking, but all the rooms are non-habitable, so it won't. So the other property concern is that about the access track, which seems quite narrow, but if it meets the requirements, that seems to be satisfactory. So that's my observations on it.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Khan. Okay, Councillor Sandford and Councillor Rickson.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I have to say this does seem a good use of a brownfield site. It's within the development framework. I do understand Councillor Williams' concern about how the dwellings have been fitted in, but I don't think that's ground for refusal. So I will be supporting this application.
Very much. And Councillor Redrop and then Councillor Rickson. Sorry, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple of concerns that I would like to raise. One is about how we've considered the Gamlingay Neighbourhood Plan Policy GAM1. That says that as appropriate to their scale, nature and location, new housing development should provide a mix of housing sizes in general and 1 and 2 bed houses in particular. And I've had a look at their neighbourhood plan, and that's based on a housing needs survey which identified the predominant need for 1 to 2 bedroom homes. It did also say there was a need for bungalows and retirement housing, and in the next 20 years a need for 2 to 3 bedroom homes. And it also provided evidence that there had been a glut in the market of 4 and 5 bedroom homes in Gamlingay, so it did seem convincing that there was this requirement for 1 to 2 bedroom homes, and that is not provided by this proposal at all. So I am concerned about that. Also looking at the other site, if you think about them all together, as approved originally, that gave 2 2-bed homes, 5 3-bed and 2 4-bed. But those 2 beds have been amended through a Section 73 to now have 3 upstairs rooms, and the poster outside the site markets them as 3 3-bedroom homes. So it is now exclusively a site of 3 to 4 bedroom homes as being marketed. So yeah, that's my concern on that point. I also am concerned about the bins and the high quality, whether it does meet high quality development. We've not had in our report any information on the drag distances for residents from their houses to the collection point, which is near the end of the road, and I think would be significant. And also, I think the plan is to have all of the bins put in one collection point by the residents. So each bin collection day, they'd have to take all their bins all the way down the road and put them all in one spot. And with food waste collections coming, there's going to be days when each resident would have a minimum of 3 bins that they would need to put out if they don't have extra blue or green bins. So that would be at least 27 bins that residents would need to be dragging down their road and then placing all together, and without anything to give me confidence that that would be something sensible to happen. I'm really very concerned about that. So I think those were my biggest concerns. So yeah, that with those being up in the air, I'm not sure about this proposal.
Relevant? Once we have separate food waste collection, it'll be 4 bins per household.
Yes,
so
indeed.
Councillor Redrop's maths are...
Can I just also, so given that we've got the debate, can I ask the case officer for some clarification during debate? Thank you. So I just wanted to check. I did a quick tot-up of the numbers of bedrooms of the first part of the development and the second part, and I came to 36 homes. I didn't tot up the number of total bedrooms, but I just want. Maybe I was counting bedrooms. Sorry. So if it's actually 36, but plus the extras in the ones, as Councillor Redrup has mentioned, then that's actually quite a lot of people living here. Can you just clarify, where is it that the bins are supposed to be put for collection?
Just to clarify, Chair, the Section 73 didn't add additional bedrooms, it added offices, so they are still 2-bed properties as far as we're concerned in the front part of the site. And in terms of the bins, I think, yeah, Dominic proposed the condition when he did his very first slide presentation, to add an extra condition for waste management condition.
So where is it that the bins would be stored?
It's not shown on this site. I know Councillor Redrup alluded to it before. They were on the discharge of conditions of the southern site. The collection point was proposed towards the front of the access. It's mentioned within this application. I think the idea is that a management company will be responsible for the drag distance. So the drag distance is acknowledged to be significant between the northern dwellings and the south of the site.
Will it be in the area with the diagram orientated this way round? Will it be in the area, as it were, north on this diagram, not north, it would be west on the proper geography?
I believe so. I'd have to get the plans up from the previous application.
Yeah, just to clarify, we only have the waste bin details for the previous application. Yeah. Dominic recommended additional condition to deal with the waste management and the bins for this site. They have indicated that they're going to use the same and use a waste management company, but we don't have the details as yet. That's why we recommended the additional condition.
Because what I observe is that area, I think, is right next to a domestic house. Number 33, which is to the left of the, is immediately left of the pharmacy. And I just wondered if 27 bins right next to a domestic house is acceptable.
If I can just clarify, sorry, I'm not sure I made myself clear previously. The 5 properties, the bin collection details and the bin storage details have already been approved, and the storage is within the plots, and then the collection point on bin day is to the west.
So it is in that?
It's actually the south, sorry, it's the way the plan's orientated. That has already been approved for the existing site. We're just looking at these 4 additional properties at the end, and we don't have the details for that as yet, and that's why we've recommended the condition.
Okay, right. Okay, but sorry, what I'm just trying to establish, is there enough room for bins to be put there for collection if that's what comes up in the plan?
We can assess that when we get the information. At the minute, we've just approved what's there for the 5 properties.
No, I quite accept. Okay, right. Right, okay. So Councillor Rickson and then Councillor Fane.
Thank you, Chair. For me, I feel like the location of this development is a good and sustainable development for residential properties. I feel I share councillors' concerns with the design. I feel that there seems to be a significant number of small issues that have been resolved in probably not the most considered way. Sort of noting particularly the windows, the number of obscured windows, the parking arrangements. We talk now about the bins. The main elevations of two of the properties have a quite a strange setup of windows as well. So they've got a door and two windows. So it feels like it's not fully considered. And the more we dig into it, the more I have issues is this a good design? Another aspect would be I can see that the properties are designed to be heated with heat pumps. However, they all include chimneys, which is a strange. Chimneys are associated with burning coal and wood fire, but none of those. That's not actually happening in the houses. So it feels it's not quite for me coming together as a scheme. However, having said that, I do note that all of the concerns, have been addressed, particularly again around overlooking. We've seen the front to back distances, and that's been demonstrated. And similarly, the parking is not, can be acceptable. So yeah. So with that in mind, I feel like the thing that's missing really is the bins aspect, but we don't have that to comment on. So currently, as I see it, whilst I'm not enamoured with the design, and I see a number of sort of ham-fisted approach to it, I don't think there's a reason that we can refuse this application. So I would be looking to support it.
Thank you, Councillor Rickson. Right, I've got Councillor Fane, then Councillor Wilson, and then Councillor Williams. And can I just observe, we have Councillor Bridget Smith online, but Bridget, Councillor Smith, I just wanted to remind you that you won't be able to speak, having not registered. Yeah, okay. Okay, so Councillor Fane.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to comment on three aspects. The first, Councillor Rickson already commented on I welcome the energy efficiency of these houses, the reliance on heat pumps. Like I think the Parish Council who also commented on this, I regret that there's no solar gain because heat pumps do have high electricity demand, but that isn't a requirement in current legislation. It may be in the future, so I don't think we can draw any conclusions from that. I think it's right to consider very carefully the impact on neighbouring properties, and I appreciated the points made by Mr. Beriski. However, I think given the fact that these premises are, I understand it, 16.1 metres window to window, and there is of course an existing building at about the same distance, and the imposition of, I think I may have got that figure wrong, but there is a substantial difference between the buildings. It suggested to me it might actually be greater than I was suggesting. But nonetheless, I think it is sufficient, particularly given the fact that the upstairs windows, which are not to be, will be glazed, including now on number 6, which would be a bedroom window, but would have other windows to the other side. So I'm afraid I'm satisfied on that point. I share the conclusion of officers, which is at 11.4. No. Well, yes, looking at I'm going to turn then to the neighbourhood plan. And when a neighbourhood plan has been approved, I think it is very important we give it very detailed consideration, as the Parish Council have asked us to do in this case. And I'm only going to deal with two aspects here. One is I am satisfied that marketing shows there is no demand. It showed that for the site that was approved earlier, and it shows that for this site as well. So that whatever we may wish, once that is established, I think it is appropriate we consider this as effectively a brownfield site. As to the design, I share the views of the officers, and I'm afraid I'm having difficulty finding the particular reference to this. This is a high quality design. I'm not concerned that it may have chimneys. Obviously, that I regard as a design feature. If the ASHPs work, they won't ever be used, they may never be connected, who knows. But they're a design feature which I think may be appropriate in a village setting. So, given those factors, I think the concerns as set out in the neighbourhood plan are addressed here, that the design is high quality, including on its energy efficiency, and that the amenity of neighbouring properties has been fully considered, bearing in mind the existing use of that site. And I see no reason not to go along with the officer recommendation and approve this application.
Thank you, Councillor Fane. Right, then we have Councillor Wilson. Yes, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I feel quite conflicted about this proposal. I acknowledge that the site is a good site for residential development opposed to what was a site that's not being used and not being taken up for employment. I am worried about the size of the homes, that they don't accord with the neighbourhood plan, that they're not meeting a need for 1 and 2 bedroom homes. I'm concerned about the livability for the future residents of having to, not knowing where their bins are going to go and having to drag them perhaps long distances. But I can't see anything in any of those concerns that I have that would lead to a refusal. So on balance, I think I'm going to have to accept that I'm uneasy about the design, not 100% happy, but I cannot think of a good reason for refusal.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Wilson and Councillor Heather Williams.
Thank you. I just want to clarify a couple of things. Just on the supplement that's on our online, appreciate some of the pages are different to yours. It goes through about fire escape window having obscure glazing, and then it says opening restricted to maximum 30 to prevent overlooking while allowing, it's getting really small, purge ventilation. So is it a case of have blockers, because obviously they need to be able to open very quickly in emergency, and we're talking a lot about glazed windows because of the sort of overlooking issues. There's so much glazed. When we have the conditions 25 and 24, which restrict the, my understanding is they restrict the permitted development, it says about enlarging and improving the property, and then 25 goes on about no new windows. Just to check that includes glazing, because I would think of new windows, if the glass gets broken, would you, and you replace just the glazing and the glass, would you necessarily think it's a new window? So just wanted to double check that was covered there. And in relation to the chimneys, I know it is quite often recommended that you have a secondary heat source if you have an air source heat pump. So quite often that it is the guidance that's recommended. So when we were looking to have an air source heat pump put in, we were told you need a secondary heat source, and the log burner was your secondary heat source. So that might explain why that's depends who they're using. So that's what I was quite surprised, but that's what we were told. Depends on the size of the property as well, which then they're sort of 4-bed properties, so they're larger properties. I just wish that the houses went around like in a sort of U shape and went round rather than the straight, because I think then there wouldn't need to be so much obscured glass, because actually you could just have the ends without windows, and because it'd be at the angle, then you wouldn't get so much overlooking. So I have listened to what members have said. I understand the frustration with the bins. My road's very similar. All my neighbours have to, sometimes it's difficult to get out because all my neighbours down there and have to put the bins outside by our house. But I think that can be a little element of buyer beware there. But the design isn't sitting right, so I will be voting for refusal sort of on HQ1 grounds, Chair.
Did you want clarification of the fire escape window?
Yes, and the opening, because it kind of feels contradictory in the description, because it then goes on to say non-escape windows at a 30-degree max.
Yes, just condition 15 covers the glazing, but yes, perhaps we can have
It's in relation
clarification
to
on the
24
opening. Yes.
on new windows from permitted development rights.
You were saying about if glass was broken, that condition 15 covers that, but yes, we can go back on the opening of it.
I think it's condition 25 that we're talking about in terms of the PD rights. So that withdraws, is proposing to withdraw any permitted development and rights for installation of new windows or new dormer windows. The replacement of the glazing in an existing window wouldn't be captured by condition 25. However, condition 14 and 15 relate to which windows need to be retained as obscure glazed. So if one of those windows, for example, was broken, it would need to be replaced, as we clarified earlier, because it's retained in accordance with those approved details. Apologies, I'm not entirely clear what the question is about the fire escape, but I'm not quite sure what the question was. Sorry.
The wording here, this really tiny, tiny text sort of contradicts itself. It says the fire escape windows can only open to 30 degrees, and then that they can open for, obviously there are fire escapes, they need to open more than 30 degrees, and then it goes on. So is that an error, or is it a case of there's like a lock and then a second thing you do? It wasn't quite clear on that tiny text there.
I would suggest building regs will pick that up rather than us. That would need to be dealt with as part of their building reg certificate in terms of how the actual openings function.
So the opening of the window restricted to 30 isn't something that's conditioned, or we have conditioned?
We've got a condition, and in terms of condition 14 and 15, and they relate to having restrictors to ensure they can't be open more than 45 degrees.
So it's only
for
45,
the obscure glazed windows.
30.
That's our condition. In terms of 45 actually is a greater opening than the 30 degrees, but that's for, in relation to the obscure glazed windows only, not to the other windows.
Okay, so despite what it reads there, they can open them up to 45.
The planning condition, yeah, on the obscure glazed windows, I note that some of those that have got that annotation on the plans are the non-obscure glazed windows as well. So building regs will pick that up.
And also, in looking at those again, what I notice is that the top vent will not be obscure glazed for any first floor window, which gives a little more light. Okay, so you've already spoken, Councillor Rickson, so I'm going to sum up and then come to Rebecca Smith. Unless there was something you wanted to raise. Use your microphone.
Apologies, it was just a little note about Councillor Williams's comment on heat pumps, and just to clarify, in new buildings, I don't believe there is any recommendation for a secondary heat source for heat pumps, and yeah, I think I'll leave it at that. I can provide a lot more detail outside of this debate.
Exactly. Okay, so I think let's face it. I think probably the chimneys are a design feature, but I think they will not be functional. I've asked this in different scenarios, and sometimes they are, given that there's an air source heat pump, they're not functional. But my view, summing up before we come to Rebecca's review, is yes, there are things that are not perfect about this design, but as I said at the beginning, it's a very sustainable location. There's a need for housing, admittedly, and I take the point that Councillor Redrup made about the requirement for 1 and 2 bedroom housing, and then in the longer term for 3 and 4 bedroom housing, and that's the argument that's being used here. But we do need housing, and I think for that reason we should welcome additional housing in the village of Gamlingay. I'm glad that we've got them coming back to explain how they're going to sort out bin collection, because I think that's going to be quite fun and games. But I also don't want our bin operators to have to go all the way down there to collect them, and I don't, that's not reasonable either. So also, the site is not beautiful at present, and I think actually the addition of some housing there will in fact improve the outlook for some of the houses that immediately surround this warehouse building. I think it'll take the rear wall of any buildings actually away from the properties in to the west in Avenel's Way. Also, we know that as residents we don't have any right to a view, and so we are responsible for screening our own properties if we don't like what's beyond our own curtilage. So I think there's an element there that that can be taken into people's own hands. So as I said, I have some reservations about the parking, and I just hope that people, I think if there are problems with that, people are going to have to sort that out amongst themselves as the homeowners. So, and I certainly don't think there's any reason, really grounds to refuse. So I'm going to be supporting this. So Rebecca, would you like to give us a summary before we go to the vote?
Thank you, Chair. So in summary, recommendation is on page 37 of your agenda, which is to approve, subject to a completed unilateral undertaking which relates to policy GAM 8 of the Gambling Gay Neighbourhood Plan and the contribution towards walking, cycling and horse riding, together with the conditions set out in the report, with minor amendments to the conditions drafted, delegated to officers, including an amendment to condition 9 as set out in the update report to make it a compliance condition, the addition of a waste management condition as Dominic included on his screen in his initial presentation, and an amendment to condition 14 to add plot 6. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. That's great. So can we go to the vote, please? Oh, sorry, yes. Would anybody like to propose this application? Councillor Fain. And a seconder, Councillor Ariel Khan. Thank you. So if we can make a vote on this, please. So it should be 9. Okay, so that's 7 and 2. And Councillor Richard Williams, we welcome you and recognise that you have not voted on this one. Great, thank you very much. So that's carried. Thank you very much, and thank you to Dominic for his presentation. Yes, I think, shall we have a 5-minute break, members? 11:18. Can I suggest we come back at 25 past, please? And we'll continue with the next one. perhaps would you take a slide? Thank you. All right, so we're returning to the committee. And firstly, can I just ask Councillor Richard Williams to introduce himself as he's arriving?
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, Richard Williams, representing the Whittlesford Ward.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we make a start then on agenda item 6, which is 23-03657/FUL, land northwest of 60 to 64 Histon Road, and our case officer is Dean Scrivener, Principal Planner. So, Dean, over to you to present the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, my name is Dean Scrivener. I'm the Principal Planning Officer for Greater Cambridge. I'm presenting this application on behalf of Phoebe Carter, who was the case officer for this application, who is not here today. Just before I start my presentation, I'd just like to say that 3 written statements from third parties were received, which have been uploaded and attached to the agenda for today. And to my left, I have Ryan Hayward, who is the Council's Drainage Officer, who'll be able to assist with any questions regarding drainage matters.
Sorry, can I just check, have all the members seen the written statements that we've been given on paper and read them? Can you just confirm that you have? Agreed? Yep. Okay, super. Would you like time to read it? Okay, let's just take, would you mind, Dean, if we can just take 5 minutes so that members can make sure they've read those statements, please. Sorry to interrupt your flow. Yes, let's just go offline for 5 minutes so that people can read these in peace. us online again, please. Thank you. Okay, so we're back online with agenda item number 6, and all members have duly read the statements that we've received. There were 3 statements from people objecting to the application, so they've all been read. And thank you for submitting them. Dean, sorry, I interrupted your presentation, so do carry on. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is an application for the erection of a single-storey bungalow and associated works to the rear of number 60 and 64 Histon Road. Sorry. This just shows the location of the site, so just showing the general access arrangements, which will come off Histon Road here. So I'm just going to put my laser pointer on so it's clearer. So this is Histon Road along here, just showing where the main access point would be down this access track into the site, into the rear here. This just shows aerial views of the site. So 64, I think, is here. The new dwelling is going in here somewhere. And to the rear is the Cottenham Mill, sawmill site. That's just showing the existing site plan as it stands. So it's existing garden land at the moment, serving number 62 Histon Road. And this is the proposed site plan, so it just shows the car parking area, permeable driveway access. New dwelling would be here, single storey in height, with a garden area here. This just shows the proposed floor plan, so it's pretty modest in scale. And again, this is just showing the elevations. I think the total height, the ridge height is 4 metres from ground level, so very low lying in, wouldn't result in any visual impact upon the countryside or the adjoining green belt. Flood risk mitigation, so the site is located within low, medium and high levels of surface water flood risk. So this just shows the light blue, which is the 1 in 1,000 surface water flood risk event. The slightly darker blue is the 1 in 100 surface water flood risk event, and the dark deep blue is 1 in 30 surface water flood risk event. The proposed dwelling itself would actually be located in the lowest level of surface water flood risk, whereas the garden area would be located within the 1 in 30, the higher surface water flood risk event. The applicant has submitted a series of flood risk assessments and drainage strategies, and as part of that, they are proposing a flood storage compensation area of 190 square metres, sorry. And the way this would work is that they would actually lower the existing levels within the garden area, which is indicated by this magenta colour here, by 150 millimetres, which would actually result in 33% increase in flood storage for water, for surface water. So this would actually trap the surface water from being displaced into adjacent areas.
Sorry, Dean, on that diagram, what is the compensation area?
So it's the area highlighted by magenta, the magenta colour. So these purple, bluey hashed area in the garden area.
And the line to the south?
This one.
That's the boundary of
think
the
that's-
properties.
Yeah, I think that's the
466,
boundaries,
isn't it?
Yeah.
And can I just check? Do carry on. We can ask questions for clarification later.
Okay. Yeah, so the footprint of dwelling is obviously indicated by the red line, which just shows that that would be actually located into the lower level of surface water flood risk, whereas the garden is the area which is located in the higher risk of surface water flood risk.
Sorry, can you just explain what the shading at the background of that
Yeah, it's probably not as clear on this diagram, but if I go back, so if I just zoom in. So the dwelling itself would actually be located in around here, this area here, and the garden area would be located, yeah, in one of the 1,000, which is the lowest surface water flood risk, but the garden actually extends towards Histon Road, which would then encroach into the higher area of surface water flood risk, which is where the most harm is. That's why the applicant is proposing this flood compensation storage area within the garden area to help trap the water so it doesn't displace into adjacent areas.
Thank you.
Oh God. Yes, I think that's everything I was going to say. So in terms of the planning balance, the proposal would promote a sustainably constructed dwelling within a sustainable location within development framework. It's modest in scale and height, limiting any visual impact. There will be no significant harm upon neighbour amenity, and the proposed flood surface water compensation measure proposed would provide a 33% uplift in flood storage on site and then offset any harm caused by surface water flooding. Therefore, officer recommendation is approval subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Right, I'm going to kick off with the first question of clarification. Could you explain what method? Well, two things. One is on the topographical survey, could you just indicate to us, I know the numbers are very small on the topographical survey, so could you just clarify to us at the northwest of the site and at the southeast of the site what the levels are, please? And then secondly, what method of surface water compensation is being proposed?
Can I just double check which, let me just share my screen again quickly.
Dean?
The existing, yeah. Okay. It's this one, isn't it?
Yes. I don't know if you can zoom in on that one so that we can see
This
what
one, yeah. So, do you mean around this area here? Is that the?
Yeah, so we're looking at 6.56 at the northwestern boundary and 6.10 at the corner of the garage.
Yeah.
What does it go to at the southeastern boundary of this plot?
Goes down to roughly 5.79.
And does that...
5.68, sorry.
And what does it go at the rear of the houses on Histon Road? It goes down to 5.7.
5.7, yeah.
Okay. So there's a dip in the middle, isn't there?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. And what's the flood compensation proposed?
I'm just going to refer to Ryan, if that's okay, Chair.
Yeah, sure, thank you.
Just to clarify on that.
Hello. So the flood mitigation they're proposing is to lower the levels within the garden to provide the extra cubic meterage storage that Dean has mentioned. So I think their method is to lower it by 150 millimetres across the garden.
550 millimetres.
150.
150.
Sorry. But they will keep so they will lower it by 150 millimetres, but they will keep the previous levels. So I think it's the southeastern corner, I think is the lowest point. So it will still be the lowest point. So there won't be any issues with them creating this storage area, but then it will be, the water will be flowing in different areas because they've lowered it in a way. They will lower it so it matches this, but it will just be 150 mil lower, if that makes sense.
So can I just clarify then? The northwestern boundary of this site is, to my eye, higher than the southeastern boundary.
Yeah.
But there is a dip in between. Is the purpose of that lowering the ground level by 150 millimetres to deepen the dip such that it stores water, because then the place where the houses are on Histon Road is slightly higher? Is that right?
So there'll still be a dip within the site. So it will be the current levels will remain the same, but they will be 150 mil lower. Sorry, it's a little bit tricky to explain.
You mean the profile will be the same,
profile,
but it'll all
yes.
be 150 millimetres
Yeah,
lower?
the profile of the garden will be the same. It will just be 150 mil lower.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Rickson, were you asking to speak?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to carry on and interrogating those numbers of the flood storage compensation. So what we've been given here is this represents a 33% increase in flood storage, ensuring no increase in flood risk elsewhere. So
we're asking questions of clarification.
Yeah, so that 33% increase, I'd like a little bit more information how that is calculated. Does that include the volume of water that is displaced by the foundations and depth of the foundations? Or is that purely calculated on the fact that they've scraped out some soil and that is that's going to store all of the water? Because surely also that soil had a capacity of storing water in the first place anyway. So I'd just like to kind of understand how that increase has been calculated.
Yep, so my understanding is the increase of 33% will be, so when the property is built, you'll obviously lose some of the storage within the site because the footprint is taking up areas that water would normally go. So they are now lowering the site to compensate for the footprint of the property. So that 33% is the increase of, so currently as the site is as a greenfield site, it will hold, I don't know the exact figures, but it will hold a certain amount of water. By putting this mitigation in, that amount of water that site can hold will increase by 33%, or the 9.8 cubic metres.
But do we actually have any, where do we see the calculations for that? Because at the moment we've just got a pink hatch. Because surely to be able to calculate that, they need to calculate the depth of the foundations, and I haven't seen that as information.
So I think that information is part of the flood risk assessment. They will put the calculations of the storage in the site prior to the development and then post-development, and that's how they've come to these figures. Thank you.
Right. Any other questions of clarification then? Councillor Ariel Khan.
Yes, still on the flood storage compensation.
Sorry, speak.
Sorry, yes, I'm still on the flood storage compensation. So I noticed that the area wraps around the dwelling on the map. Is there any risk of the water during a flood? Is there any risk to the dwelling considering that, or not really?
Yeah, so again, as part of the flood risk assessment, they will have provided information on how the property will be protected. I think they're doing it through raising the floor levels and some flood mitigation. Let me just double check my notes. Yeah, so I think they will be raising the floor levels of the property, and they will be using sort of waterproof materials within the property. So for this application, it's quite a common flood risk mitigation method. It's more not keeping the water out, it's trying to return the property back to a habitable state after a flood event. So in areas where flooding occurs, a lot of the time it's not possible to keep the water out entirely. There will be some water entering the property. So they'll be using sort of plasterboard that can be easily replaced, sort of tiled flooring or laminate flooring rather than carpets, things like that, raising sort of outlets and electrical sockets and things like that. So those are the mitigation methods they'll be using to sort of protect the inhabitants of the property and the property itself. Hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Councillor Fane.
No apologies to coming back to this question of flood risk. I don't know whether my question is to Dean or to Ryan. We see an increase in flood storage capacity here, but of course one of the impacts of climate change, as we've seen this weekend, not locally, is heavy rainfall events, which might overwhelm even this storage capacity unless there is some means for the water to escape once the new storage capacity is reached. And my question really relates to the 3 written statements that, Dean, you referred to earlier. We may be hearing from some of these people, I don't know, later on, but I will nonetheless ask the question. So, written statement 1, surface water would be displaced immediately into surrounding gardens. This impact would occur regardless of the efficiency of the proposed drainage solution. Written statement 2, already prone to becoming waterlogged during wetter periods, would increase the likelihood and frequency of localised flooding in neighbouring gardens. And written statement 3, increased risk of flooding, well documented previously. Are we satisfied that those assessments are overtaken by events, by the proposals outlined here and by the revised flood risk assessment?
Yeah, I can answer that. So yeah, I think having reviewed the flood risk assessment and all the documentation that the applicant has provided, I'm happy that the storage and the flood risk mitigation that they have proposed is adequate for the site. It's adequate for the level of flooding. I know you mentioned climate change. It comes to a point where there's only so much mitigation you can put in place. I think the 33% is an adequate amount increase to have to contain those increased rainfall events that you mentioned through climate change. So I think from a drainage point of view, I'm happy with the documentation they've provided and the information they've provided. Hope that answers your question.
Thank you. And Councillor Redrop.
Thank you. I had one question on the flood risk and then and a couple on some other things, so I hope that's okay. So the one on flooding was about condition 7, which says about all these measures being implemented before the house would be occupied. But is there anything to make sure that that has to stay in place whilst the people are living there as well? If someone comes in from a different area and doesn't understand and has a gardening plan, you know, is there anything to make sure that they maintain these measures that are there to protect them and neighbouring properties?
Yeah, so as a part of the flood risk assessment and a part of the surface water drainage strategy we asked for is a maintenance schedule. So that would be maintenance of the flood mitigation proposed for the property, and it will be for the garden as well. So it will include things such as keeping the levels in the garden as they are designed here, so they can't put in sort of a giant pond or raise the levels or anything like that. So we'd hope that that would counteract that issue of if someone new moves into the property they don't know about.
We might need some wording like "and to be maintained thereafter," as we've used in other conditions.
Yeah, I was just saying we could add that to condition 7.
You had some other points, Councillor.
Yeah, sure. Is it okay to go to a different topic?
Sure.
So in section 13.10, sort of 11.12, there's some talk about the impact of the site on the greenbelt based on policy NH8, which part 3 says development on the edges of settlements which are surrounded by the greenbelt must include careful landscaping and design measures of a high quality. So I have looked at the soft landscaping scheme, but it seems that the landscaping on the edges of the site aren't on the side that has the green belt. So where the green belt is adjacent to the site is a car parking space, rather than any soft landscaping. So I wanted to ask about that because it does say in the report that that's deemed acceptable. So I'd be grateful for any rationale for that. And then also in 13.2, it mentions the current development at Cottenham Sawmills. and that being used as a reason for not worrying so much about the impact of this site on the greenbelt. But I'm not sure if that's an approved site, so I just wanted to check if that is how we should be thinking about this. Thank you. Oh, and then there's one more.
Dean, did you want to respond to the comment about the ex-Cottenham Sawmill site and the landscaping?
Yeah, so just on the landscaping, so I'm just looking at the landscaping plan that we've conditioned, and it is proposing that a 1.8 metre tall close boarding fence is going to run along the rear, but obviously to the rear of the site is the Cottenham Sawmill building, so actually the impact from the green belt is sort of shielded from those existing buildings. We did consult our landscape officer as part of the application, and they were content that there would be no visual harm in terms of impact on the green belt. Also, I suppose the dwelling itself is single storey, it's 4 metres in height from ground level, so any views from within the green belt would be very limited, so we're happy that sort of harm would be mitigated. Sorry, what was your other point? I lost track.
The landscaping, the impact on the green belt, and then I think you had a further, it was the fact that the car parking is right next to the green belt. But I think you've dealt with that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a fence, there's going to be a fence there which is 1.8 metres, so that will shield any car parking.
Did you have a further question, Councillor Roger?
Well, yeah, within that, it was part of the rationale was that there was going to be a new development there, but I wasn't sure that had been approved, so I wasn't quite certain on that. But the final question was about condition 2, I think, which says to develop according to the plans listed, and there aren't any plans currently listed, so it's just to check that they could be added, please.
Yeah, so just with condition 2, they'll be added onto the decision notice when we issue the decision if it is approved. And yeah, the site at the back, there's a pending application, so there's no decision being made on that yet.
I'd like to come back on the drainage issue, and I wanted to ask Ryan, if I may, or indeed you, Dean, if you can answer it. What is the status of flood mitigation that is proposed in an area that is already subject to flood risk? In other words, the flood mitigation that's proposed is in the area where the 1 in 100 and 1 in 1,000 year incident is shown on the EA flood planning. And I just wondered what's the, if the area is already subject to flooding, how can you put flood mitigation in that location?
I might need you to I'm not entirely sure what the question is.
So the area, let's say to the southeast of the proposed bungalow, maybe Ryan, maybe Dean can show us back on the flood risk plan. That's already the area that is already subject to surface flooding from surface water under the in the existing plan. And what I was just wondering is how do we view mitigation schemes that are planned in an area that's already in an area where flooding might happen?
Yeah, so I think the flood mitigation they're proposing for this is for this
site. Could you put your microphone on?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
So yeah, I think the flood mitigation they are suggesting for this site is to provide the storage within this site and to protect the property, this property. So in terms of the wider flood risk, this mitigation they're suggesting won't increase the risk of surface water flooding to the rest of the area, and if anything, it'll improve the situation by providing that extra 33% of storage, meaning that the surface water won't flood out into other areas of sort of neighbouring land and neighbouring sites.
If I can just jump in to clarify, I don't know if that makes it any easier, but the compensation measures are there to mitigate from the proposed development. It won't improve the existing situation. That's not what it's designed for, is to mitigate what's proposed. So to ensure it doesn't worsen the situation.
Yes, exactly. That's the concern. I'm just interested that mitigation of this development is being planned in a location that already subjects this whole area and its neighbours to a risk of flooding. And I'm just wondering how that works. But Ryan has said that this does improve the situation for flood planning. So let's hope that it won't make things worse, because that's the other thing we have to be careful of, isn't it? That not to make things worse for neighbouring properties. Okay, are there any other questions of clarification? Councillor Williams is? Councillor Richard Williams?
Thank you, Chair. So, excuse me. Just to clarify on that map. So, basically the flood mitigation provision there is essentially that the garden of this dwelling is going to turn into a pond in the event of a flood. Is that right? That is intentional, that it will become flooded with water. That's the point.
Yeah, that's how
okay.
it's designed. It's an attenuation feature.
I mean, are there sort of schemes where this has happened before? Because my worry is that if your garden turns into a pond and you notice that all your neighbours' gardens are not a pond, the natural human reaction is to try and dig a little hole in the corner so that the water drains away from your property. And you know, we're talking something that could happen in 20 years' time, long after this planning application has been, approved. So I slightly worry about the practicality of that. And then my second question is just in terms of the conditions we talked about. I think Councillor Redrup mentioned it. I mean, and just to confirm, there will be no monitoring though what's going on in that garden on a sort of yearly, monthly basis. I mean, I assume that's obvious. So people could do something, and nobody really will be checking. Is that correct?
Can I come back on that? Nobody monitors from the council any development proactively. Unfortunately, we don't have the resources within the planning department to do that. So it would be the same as any other development within the council. We have to rely on people complying with their conditions, and if they don't, someone reporting it to us.
Yes. Councillor Rickson.
Thank you, Chair. If I may, I've been looking at the additional, let's see what it's been called, as the additional notes in relation to the surface water drainage. So coming back to those numbers.
In the report? Or
in the report, yes. Coming back to the numbers that we've been given, where there's a 30% increase in flood storage, that's been worked out based on the fact that under the building, so the area of the building and the hard standing has a total area of 103 square metres, and that land is being raised. So that is being an area of 103 square metres land is being raised, and to mitigate that, an area of land is being dug out, and which is so the numbers are 20 cubic metres and 30 cubic metres. So that gives the third increase. But I would dispute those numbers. I think we're being misled because those numbers do not include an increase in volume of water being able to be stored, because it does not include the water that is displaced by the foundations of the building, and it does not include the fact that water was already being stored within the garden area or the volume that is being dug out. So I don't believe it is a useful increase in water storage. I just wondered if you've got any comments on that, or if I've misread that.
Can I just clarify which report you're reading? Because I'm looking at the addendum and I've got different figures.
The MTC is under additional information, RE surface water, submitted on the 4th of February.
Talking about the report for the agenda or a report that's coming on the portal?
It's planning portal, so a report on the planning portal,
Okay.
apologies. And I'm looking at, to get those figures, page... I've lost the page. Essentially, we've got them just coming level. Page 3 of that.
And what's the name of the report? Just remind us.
On the planning portal, it is called Additional Information RE Surface Water Flooding.
Okay.
Submitted on the 4th
Additional
of February.
information re surface water flooding. Let's let Rebecca have a look at that.
There's one page 3 of that. That starts with, it sort of gives a written calculation of how that area is being calculated.
Rebecca, have you found it?
Yes.
Okay. Are you having a quick read?
Yes.
Okay, can I just ask Vanessa to come back in, our legal advisor?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Rickson, your comment, you think we are being misled, concerns me. What did you mean?
Well,
sorry, who do you think you're being misled by?
Well, by the numbers that we've been
By the
given.
author of the report?
Yeah, I guess the reports.
The author of the report. Are you talking about the planning officer?
No, it's well, I suppose it's applicants MTC Engineering. Or misled or misunderstood. What can I withdraw my comments or change them slightly? I've questioned these numbers basically.
Councillor Rickson, just you are, as I understand it, you are saying that you think the committee is being misled by the content of a report that has been written for the applicant. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, right.
I guess
Vanessa,
no.
If I can come back, Vanessa might want to come back as well, but if I can come back. So that is the most recent iteration of that report following comments from the drainage officer on the previous flood risk assessment and the previous addendum to it. I think that's gone through, I'm trying to think of more words this morning, gone through in the report, in the committee report. That's the technical specialist report. We've had our technical specialist review that report, make comments on it, and they are satisfied with it. I don't think there's anything further I can say.
Okay, thank you. Vanessa, did you want to come back?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Rebecca. The words been, to suggest that the committee is being misled is, I'm afraid, not appropriate. If you have a concern with the report, direct to the planning officer. I think they have answered your query. But I'll leave it there.
No, I appreciate that. Apologies for the incorrect use of terminology there.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, okay, so I can't see any other requests for points of clarification. So I will move us into debate then, members. Oh, sorry, yes, of course, yes, right, that's always helpful. Right, so the first objection was the 3 written statements, which we've all read. The second, we have Manfred Bandorski, who has half the time, and Emily Smith, who has asked for a presentation to be put up. So if you'd like to both come to the speaker's position. So you're sharing the time between you, and I think Mr. Bandorski, I believe you're going first, are you? With 1.5 minutes. We're going to have to time you quite carefully.
Right.
Okay, don't worry, you're not starting yet. So just to clarify,
Right.
you'll have 1.5 minutes, and then we'll move on to Emily Smith, and then at that point we'll put up the slides that you've asked for, Emily. Okay, so Mr. Bandorski, over to you.
Right. I may be here for actually the wrong thing, because what you've had on your ticket up there is different to the one that we got sent through for the planning application, because technically the people where they want to go back through the back of the garage, that
Mr. Bandorski, is this your representation?
Yes.
Or, okay, sorry.
Yes, yes, it is. Yes, I've tried putting this forward before coming here on several occasions to talk to somebody, but I have had no joy. Now, to get out where they got out on this plan, they are coming out on my land, on both things, and I might be like the lassie here says, it may be a civil matter, which I'm not sure of, but I just find it strange that if you pass this on how it actually is, not how it's written down here, there's no way you can get a car off there where they're building down to the right, to turn right down the driveway. Unless you've got something like a Mini, and even then you're going to have to shunt about 4 times. It's literally impossible to get in there. So how on earth they can do what they've done here is by what they're looking here. They're trying to take land off to make it look like it's bigger than it is, and it isn't that size.
So you misrepresentation.
Does that make sense?
Can I just ask, what is your property?
I own Cottenham Sawmills, the land at the back.
Okay.
And also on the other side of the drive, on the proposed plot, there's a garden. Well, that drive, I live on, I'm number 56. Okay. And also on the plan that I've got here that I originally got, there's a green strip between the drive and my fence. Now you cannot get out of their plot without going at the back. It's got here a garage. It isn't a garage, it's a shed.
I think, Mr. Bandorski, these items are indeed of civil matters.
Right, okay, I understand that.
So what you're saying, that I think I'm going to call a halt there because you've had 1.5 minutes.
Okay.
We understand the gist of what you're saying, that you're saying that the plans don't represent the land correctly, and we can take that away. But
can I? Is it possible just for me to see somebody afterwards to show this? Because I've got documentation here.
I'm sure that will be possible, but I'm going to call a halt now.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
If I can just clarify, on the application form, the applicants have signed certificate B to indicate they don't own all of the land, and they have served the requisite notice on number 56. Okay.
Did you catch that, Mr. Bandorski?
Not really. No. Sorry.
Sorry.
I'll say it again.
Yes.
On a planning application form, you have different options to sign at the end. There's certificate A, which is if you own all of the land. In this instance, the applicant has signed certificate B, indicating that they don't own all of the land within the red line area. But as part of that, you have to list who you've served the required notice on to let them know that you're submitting a planning application. And on the application form, they have indicated they've served notice on yourself at number 56 to let you know that they were submitting the application. It doesn't matter whether somebody owns land or not. They could submit applications on land they don't own. But
right.
But they have to serve the relevant notice on the person that owns the land, if that makes sense.
Okay, fine. I wasn't aware of that. I just assumed that
Okay, Mr.
Yeah, fine. Okay, I will. So who can I see afterwards then to clarify this? Because I'm struggling to hear about this. My hearing's not that good. Who can I? I've been here about 4 or 5 times to try to see somebody to clarify this, and I've been fobbed off each time. Now, this is why I'm here.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what you need to clarify, but we are around after the committee if you want to either speak to myself or Dean.
So you, after the committee, you can, Dean Scrivener, the case officer, and Rebecca Smith will be here, and you can speak to them after the committee.
Brilliant. That's all I'm asking.
So we'll call a halt there. Yes.
Thank you. That's all I'm asking. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Can I just ask you to turn the microphone off briefly? Thank you. And we'll come back to Emily. Sorry.
I think the Speaker will need to answer this, Chair, but going through the process, we say that the applicant has told us they have served. What I've not heard is it affirmed by the public speaker that they received the notice.
Notification.
And or did they find out through this application? Have we evidence that they have actually done as said, or we just rely on them ticking the box?
Can you tell us, have you received the notice that has been served by the applicant for this?
We got it through the post.
You have got it?
Yes.
Yep, okay, so you have received
I've got
it.
one of them here.
Yep, thank you very much. From the applicant?
No, this was from...
So what you've received is, because you registered to speak...
Just a second, I don't want to lie to you, just a second.
I can clarify that we have consulted the neighbours.
This was supplied by MTC Engineering, whoever that is.
Okay. Oh, so that is the applicant.
Okay, so you have been served notice that this is what they plan to do.
Right, okay, yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yep, that's lovely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Vanessa.
Members, just to confirm, title is not within your gift to consider.
Sorry?
Land title, not for the planning committee to consider.
It's a civil matter and it's for them to sort out. Okay, right. Okay, sorry about that delay. Thank you very much, Mr. Bandorski. That's fine. And we'll now listen here. Yes, that's fine. As long as you pass the microphone over to Emily, that's great. She's got it. Okay. I believe, Dean, you're sharing some images while Emily's going to speak. Thank you, Sarah. Do you want to go on to the first image? Great. Okay. So, Emily Smith, you've asked for that to be shared, and you've got 1 minute and 30 seconds. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm speaking in objection, and my objections relate primarily to drainage. As you can see, houses in this part of Cottenham have repeatedly suffered issues with drainage of surface water in the past, which we are concerned may be worsened by this application. In addition, the proposal discussed to lower the existing ground level of the property, we feel may lead to this bungalow suffering from the same issues of flooding in the garden as the neighbouring properties, which would substantially limit the amenity value of this garden for any future residents. Secondly, if we could go on to the next image. As you can see here, this plan shows in red this proposed bungalow with 2 other live planning applications in yellow and orange. This bungalow will need to start discharge its surface water into the drain under Histon Road and then into the IDB ditch, which is circled in red. The 2 live planning applications here have had extensive investigation of the drains under Histon Road undertaken as part of those applications. And if we go on to the next slide, please, you will see that a number of comments have been made by the LLFA on the drains under Histon Road as part of this, which relate to the lack of clarity of their ownership and their poor condition and lack of suitability for any additional discharge. We're concerned that any additional discharge into these drains would worsen the existing drainage problems, and the only other option potentially would be to lay a new surface drain under Histon Road, which seems implausible for a bungalow and a development of this size. Therefore, we don't feel it's possible to develop a suitable drainage strategy for this application. That concludes the comments that I would like the committee to take into consideration as part of their discussion, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and for your slides, that's helpful. Right, so just to summarise that, what Ms Smith is saying is that the lead local flood authority, commenting on different applications altogether, but in this vicinity, have said that the passive drainage system isn't, I can't remember the exact words, forgive me if I paraphrase, but is not suitable for receiving additional water. Okay, so I'm now going to move on. to the applicant, which is Philip Kratt, speaking on behalf of the applicant and attending in person. I don't think he's here. So we'll move on and we'll go to Joe Brooke, who's the Clerk of Cottenham Parish Council. Who also isn't here. Oh, is she online? Oh, hello, Joe. Thank you. So, Joe, can I just confirm that you have the permission of your parish council to speak on this application?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Great. Lovely. Thank you. So do go ahead. You've got 3 minutes.
Okay, so I'm speaking on behalf of the Parish Council to object on the grounds of flood risk, inadequate drainage evidence and non-compliance with local planning policy. First, the applicant has failed to demonstrate that surface water can be safely or sustainably managed on the site. The infiltration test they rely upon was not undertaken on the development plot at all, but 125 metres away in a different location with no proven relevance. They have simply assumed that a testing on the actual site isn't possible. Furthermore, the engineer states that a full ground investigation will only be carried out after permission is granted. This is not acceptable. Flood risk must be assessed with real site-specific evidence before any permission is considered. The applicant also acknowledges that in extreme or prolonged rainfall, when the ground becomes saturated, discharge will be via runoff. Yet local residents already experience saturation for much of the year. Existing runoff does not function, gardens remain waterlogged and pumps are required. One property has flooded 4 times. Gardens at surrounding properties on Histon Road flood constantly due to the high water table. Cottenham has suffered 3 consecutive 1 in a 100-year flood events. Permeable paving will not resolve the issues, specifically when long-term maintenance by residents cannot be guaranteed. It's worth noting that the land, according to the 6-inch 1887 and 25-inch 1901 OS maps, was originally marshland. The proposed drain in the location is private and they cannot discharge without IDB consent. LLFA officers recently investigated flooding affecting nearby properties and noted concerns about possible historic quarrying and groundwater challenges, none of which have been addressed in the application. There is also no comment from the LLFA, only the district drainage officer, despite the seriousness of the flood risk. The proposal fails on planning policy grounds as well. There's no need for additional housing in Cottenham, and the neighbourhood plan clearly states that the village has exceeded its assessed housing requirement. More generally, the scheme itself is contrary to the linear form of Cottenham and therefore conflicts with neighbourhood plan policy COH 15, harming the character of the area. Finally, section 25.3 of the planning conditions, given the heavy weight of traffic on B1049, any deliveries, unloading or unloading associated with the development, should it be approved, must be conditioned to take place outside of peak hours for safety reasons. Members, the application fails to demonstrate safe drainage, fails local and national planning policy, and risks worsening an already serious flooding situation. Short-term economic benefits and sustainability do not outweigh the harm of exacerbating long-term flood issues. Therefore, I urge you to refuse the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Brooke. Very clear and succinct and to the point. Right. So, members, do we have any questions of clarification to the case officer based on any of the issues raised by people so far? Councillor Heather Williams?
Completely, I'm not seeking to go into who owns what land, but are we certain that conditions like condition 6, which is to do with hard landscaping, including the driveway, patios, etc., is within the control of the applicant? Because normally we are told that our conditions must be in the control of the applicant, but as he doesn't, or they don't have actually control of all of the land in the application, is that still possible?
The conditions have to be relevant to the site within the red line or land in the control of the applicant, and they are relevant to the red line location plan.
Okay. Councillor Richard Williams?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to come back to this flooding point, because it's been raised by a number of the speakers. And I would just like to ask for some further clarification on the point that Councillor Rickson raised, because having had a look at the report myself, it seems pretty clear to me that the 33% figure is just simply calculated by taking the area that will be excavated and the soil that will go, and doesn't take, as Councillor Rickson said, any account of the fact that the soil that's already there would have absorbed some water. So it's not actually 26.2 additional metres over and above what's there. And from my reading of it, I think Councillor Rickson is right. So I would like some clarification on that, because I think it's quite important.
Okay, thank you. Can we perhaps ask the case officer initially, and maybe Ryan, if they could comment on that? And sorry, I just want to say I haven't forgotten Councillor Eileen Wilson, who's speaking as local member. Just don't worry.
I think our view is that, I mean, these figures have been calculated by MTC Engineering, who are quite reputable drainage engineering consultants. So, I mean, if you're arguing against their sort of figures and whatnot, you're sort of undermining their role as a drainage consultancy. So I think, yeah, I think that's my view. I don't know if you want to come back on that or add on anything to that.
Does Ryan want to make any comment or not?
Yeah, so I agree with what the statement D made. Yeah, MTC Engineering, we have multiple applications come in with their knowledge and their expertise. So I think they know what they're doing. In regards to, I think you're mentioning sort of infiltration of the soil. I think in this area there's not a lot of infiltration, I think because of the geology, and also due to the sort of flood risk of the area. Relying on that infiltration isn't best practice, due to, again, I think it was mentioned, the high groundwater levels in the area, plus in times of flood, that infiltration won't exist. So.
And if I can also jump in and clarify, that letter that has been referred to is an addendum update to the original flood risk assessment, which is the 49-page flood risk assessment, which is also on the application file, which goes into detail, including where the trial pits were located, what the proposed discharge rates and attenuation volumes, etc. are. So the detail is in the main report. This is an addendum update to it.
Right, I have further clarifications requested. Can I just check? I've got Richard Williams again, is that right? And then James Rickson, and then Councillor Heather Williams. So these are matters of clarification again. I'm being generous in that I'm giving you this again. So Councillor Williams first.
So I did just want to come back on that and just push back on the idea that the suggestion that we can't ask questions about these reports because we're criticising people's professionalism. It's a simple calculation. They've got 174.5 metres squared. They're saying will be excavated to 150 millimetres. You just multiply 174 times 0.012 and you come up with exactly the figure they've given us, and that doesn't account for the absorption rate of the soil. So it's a legitimate point. That's the point of us, really, is to ask these questions. It's not just to accept everything we're told, without applying some reasonable scrutiny.
That's why we're discussing it. I'm allowing the discussion because I think if people feel that there is information that they don't feel sure of, then I think it's reasonable that we ask it. Councillor Rickson, did you want to come back? Can I ask you to be succinct and brief?
I'll do my best. Thank you, Chair. It was to carry on this, on the point about the flood mitigation. I'm also looking at how this volume is being calculated. There's an area of the site that is being raised. That's one volume, and that is being raised, I believe, from 5.9 to 6.1. So that is, but this is the highest. Currently, as we look at it, the highest part of the site is being raised by a couple of 100 millimetres. But to mitigate that, in this calculation, a lower part of the site, where the water would have pooled anyway, that is being lowered. So I'm just struggling with it, and I'm not here to question consultants sort of directly, but I think I agree with Councillor Williams. We're sort of here as just as as a sense check as councillors, just to ask these questions, because it appears that it's a funny balance. I would struggle to believe this, that the water would never actually flood. Well, at the higher point. Anyway, sorry. I don't know if that's clear at all, but it just seems.
I think we've got your drift, that you're still uncomfortable about it. Councillor Heather Williams, this is matters of clarification still.
Yes, Chair. So I'm going to start from the viewpoint that whether you've got technical expertise or not, everyone can make a mistake. I think we can all agree, we're all human beings, mistakes do happen. So I think it is valid if we see something, we know ourselves, sometimes we have updates to reports because errors are made, etc. So try to take the sort of that element out of it. So I'm going to rephrase it. With the height discrepancies and with the soil that Councillor Richard Williams had referred to being taken away, I'm going to make it hypothetical. Will that have an impact as to this assessment? Whether you believe it's a mistake or not in the report, put that to one side for a moment. Will these differences make a difference to the outcome of the assessment? And based on the answer, I'll say whether I think this is actually in a fit state for us to be decided today, because there is a lot of things going on here, which I think people are getting more and more comfortable with.
Let's ask our drainage expert whether you feel that if there has been an inadvertent miscalculation, which we're not saying there has been, but if you think there has, do you think this would be a reason for this report not being reasonable for this, for us to consider? Because well, right, okay. Let's just go from the basic principle. I don't know the total area of this site, but within it, there is an area that's going to be dug out for the foundation of this house, and that area is being raised by 0.2 of a metre relative to the ground area. But that area would, in its untouched state, have acted as a sink for rainwater landing on the land. So that area in itself has to be compensated for elsewhere in order not to increase the risk of flooding to neighbouring properties. So is the report saying that that lower area is adequate to compensate for that loss of raised footprint? You're saying it is. That's your understanding. Okay. Yes, Rebecca, do you want to come back in?
If I can just come back again, I can only reiterate what I've already said, unfortunately. So this, we have several iterations of the flood risk assessment. As you'll note, the detail within the report, where our drainage officer has gone back and forth asking for additional information and asking for further detail within the flood risk assessment. He is our technical expert, and he has assessed the report, he's assessed the information in the report, and has advised us that he's comfortable with it. And that is the basis on which we are recommending it today. We have our own technical expert, he's assessed it, and he's comfortable with it.
I will make a final, oh, yep, okay. Councillor Khan, do you want to come in? You have a comment to make?
Yes,
A question of clarification. Councillor Khan.
Basically.
Oh, you're very quiet. Hang on a minute.
Oh.
Can you put your microphone down in front of your mouth, Martin?
Oh, sorry. Using the different thing. Is that better?
Yes, it is.
No, yeah, sorry. What I was going to ask about is the runoff into the drain. This is a separate issue. There was the comment was that the drain would not accept the amount of surface water runoff, and that would cause a problem. Normally, in applications, one requires that the runoff from the property should not exceed the greenfield rate, and it should be regulated so that happens. Can you confirm that that would be the case here?
Thank you, Councillor Khan. We were looking at data that had been provided to us from Emily Smith about the observations that had been made by the lead local flood authority about different sites, but in the vicinity. But perhaps, Dean, if you could respond to that.
I was just trying to find the paragraph number. It's at 17.11, which is page 67 of your report. So the document confirms that the drain to the rear would have capacity to be able to discharge into this at a greenfield rate.
Drain to the rear of what? Because the rear of the property is uphill. So I'm not quite sure what that meant. I must say it was one thing I was going to ask about. But
I'll get Dean to put the plan up on screen.
Thank you.
So Dean has put up these drainage plan. So the grey area you can see there is the permeable paving driveway, which will then outfall into the blue hatch line going down the access way, which will then connect into the sewer under Histon Road, which will then connect into the IDB drain. I can also confirm from reading the drainage reports and the flood risk assessment that they have they've provided adequate storage within the permeable paving that an outfall at a greenfield rate into that surface water sewer, so the one going down the access way, is possible, and they've backed that up with drainage calculations.
The drain to the rear is uphill of the rest of the site. So how can water from the site drain into that?
So the water will be from the roof water. It will be put into the sub base of the permeable paving, and then that will outfall through some sort of outfall from that sort of storage within the permeable paving.
So it'll be piped. It'll be piped through to that
location,
it will be, and then
yeah,
into a drain that runs down the access road. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Can you just leave that slide on and just move it up slightly so that we can see the properties at 60 to 64 as well? Thank you. Okay, that's fine. Can I just clarify the point that Councillor Richard Williams made, which is if you saw your garden turning into a pond, wouldn't you just do something unkind to your neighbours? What I notice is that the properties fronting onto 60, 62, 64 Histon Road, the verge on the road, there is no pavement along there, but there's a grass verge, but you have to go down 2 or 3 steps to the front doors of these properties. In other words, these properties are set lower than the road and lower than much of the land around them. So if anything did go wrong with this deepened location in the rear of the proposed new bungalow, the water would, if it came down through the gardens, it cannot escape onto a road drain. It would pond around the front doors or indeed these properties because they're lower than the remaining land. And one of the things that you've said in your excellent report is at 23.3, you talk about that the proposed ground levels provide additional flood storage. And these flood compensation measures will be secured via a condition as they are integral to tilting the planning balance. And I think this discussion that we're having indicates that we feel that the committee is feeling extremely uncomfortable about the planning balance. And if it's this information which is serving to tilt that planning balance, I think we likewise, I'm not going to speak for the rest of the committee, I personally feel slightly uneasy about this. I absolutely hear what the officers have said, but yes, can we? Yes, I'm just a little bit concerned about tilting the planning balance. So, can I just ask then to Dean, in your view, do you feel, given that you can hear, and obviously you would have been concerned about this anyway, but you can hear that the issues that the members are raising, are you confident that this proposed mitigation is indeed sufficient to tilt the planning balance?
Yes, for the reasons we've already given.
Okay, thank you. Right, okay, any other questions of clarification? Right, I'm just now going to come to, sorry, oh, did you indicate?
Yeah, just very quickly, Chair, just to pick up on the point you made about the driveway and the fact that it's uphill. If we were talking about, which I thought we were talking about for a second, runoff from the house going under the driveway and going up to that blue dot, it would need to be piped, not pumped. I'm sorry, it would need to be pumped, not piped.
No,
because you're right, it's uphill.
From the roof?
Yeah, it's going up.
Well, yes.
It would need to be pumped to go up and then down that drain.
I think effectively it would be going across, wouldn't it? But anyway, thank you for that point. I think at that point, it would be natural drainage. If perhaps you could show us the topo numbers.
I think the simple answer is that the pipe wouldn't be level. It would have a slope on it.
Yes, exactly. So it's, what is it, 6.38, is it, at the...
It's a metre higher than the house, 6.57 now.
Top of the house. 5.57 at the manhole, but at the house it's 6. Oh, okay, 5.7. Okay, okay, right. I'm just going to ask Councillor Eileen Wilson, who's speaking as local member for this. Thank you for your patience, Councillor Wilson. You can hear we're concerned about these things, so we're interested to hear what you say. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. So I'm speaking as one of the local members for Cottenham, and I must say at the outset that this site has figured large in my casework since I was first elected in 2018. I cannot emphasise enough how successive applications for development on this site have caused major concerns and anxiety for the residents living in the properties fronting Histon Road. The gardens of these properties are, except in times of extended drought, subject to flooding from surface water that doesn't drain away because of the high water table, even when there is no further rainfall. the gardens are underwater. The residents have observed that this problem has been exacerbated by new developments along Oakington Road, which is a parallel road on the other side of the field that is higher than these cottages. These houses have been because increased runoff. One resident told me that the garden remained green when the rest of Cottenham, the surrounding fields, were all brown during the drought earlier this year, which is very telling that the water just doesn't disappear. One resident had to move out of their home for several months because of flooding in her dwelling as well as in the garden. And this again happened after the development of the new homes in Oakington Road. As regards the need for housing, Cottenham has been growing as a result of speculative development arising from the lack of a 5-year housing land supply prior to September 2018. The growth is as follows: Bellway, 50 homes; Persimmon, 125 homes; Redrow, 200 homes; Tillier, 140 homes, 511 homes in total. Further, Tillier has come back for revision of its application because it had too many 3-4 bedroom homes, and these have been reduced to 1 and 2 bedroom homes. Further development is planned slightly further along Histon Road of 30 plus social homes. So the development of one bungalow on a site that is very questionable in terms of sustainability won't make a difference to the housing needs in Cottenham, when the housing needs in Cottenham are being more than served by the current and future developments. So I would suggest that this is not an appropriate site for a bungalow or for any home to be built, given the problems for the neighbouring properties of flooding. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wilson. Does anybody have any questions of clarification to the case officer based on what Councillor Wilson has said? Nope. Okay, right. So thank you very much, Councillor Wilson. Right, so we move into debate, members. Who would like to go first? Councillor Heather Williams.
So, to be honest, I think this is turned into a bit of a mess, really, of an application, and I don't feel that this is actually a complete application. I think the reason we've had so many questions of clarification is because the information or the assurances that we need just aren't in it. Now, and that's not saying that anybody's not doing their jobs how they should be doing them, but it is very, very frustrating. It also reminds me of an application I had in my patch where we went through all of this, a lot of upset. They got permission, they didn't own all the land, and the landowner refused to give it, and therefore we went through all that for nothing, and it never happened. So we'll if it is given permission today, we'll wait and see what happens there. But based on our clarification, and the chair did say about the way that the balance is tilted, I can understand why officers have given the recommendation they have based on the evidence that is in front of them, but we as a committee can make a different decision. That is our purpose, and we can apply weight in different ways, and that's what I will be doing. I have severe concerns, as Councillor Wilson said, for the neighbouring properties. I do not feel we've had sufficient information that means that we can feel sort of that the residents are safeguarded by the proposals. I think this is beyond an accident waiting to happen. And I know it says no significant harm to neighbour amenity, but that's just not how I feel right now. I do think there is a potential way of what's been put forward where it could be workable. But what we've got in front of us just isn't there for me. Sorry, it's how I feel.
Thank you. Councillor Peter Sanford.
Thank you, Chair. It's rather unfortunate the applicant isn't with us today. I know we can consider the application without their presence, but if they'd been here to speak to some of these things we've been floundering around for some while now, it might have helped. I have to agree with Councillor Heather Williams. Anyone can make a mistake, and if the numbers on the report are wrong, they're wrong. There's no we can't blame the officers if they've taken things at face value and perhaps are wrong. But I'm looking at an application where the garden is likely to flood probably every year, several years. Why not just put a holding pond or some other device there and not pretend it's a garden? I was also shuddering when I listened to Ryan talking about how you can flood-proof houses. I had to suffer a flood in a house 20 years ago, and yes, you can eventually clean it out, and the smell goes after 6 months, but even with solid floors, the other devices, you know, lifting the electrical sockets up, the house, the bungalow, is going to be unworkable unlivable for months on end, and a 1 in 100 year flood, yes, but that might come in year 2. So I'm really not comfortable. I'll have to vote against this as it stands in front of us.
Thank you, Councillor Sanford. Anybody else wishing to speak? Councillor Richard Williams.
Thank you. Yes, Chair. I also don't feel I can support this application because I'm not satisfied that the flood prevention measures will be effective. We've talked at length about the questions we've got around the mitigation and actually whether the excavation of the garden will actually fully compensate for the development, and also the problem of turning the garden into a pond. But just to go back to the previous one, I am also quite concerned about this supposed drain at the top of the driveway, because as we just saw, the top of the driveway is more than 1 metre higher than the house, and yes, you might put a pipe under the driveway that's 1 metre below the surface, but that pipe goes into a drain on the lane, which we've heard is not in the control of the applicant. Now, is there an existing drain on that lane? Is it 1 metre below the surface such that it could connect? If there is no drain already on that land, then you'd need the landowner's permission to build a drain 1 metre below the surface of that lane. So I'm not convinced that that's a credible drainage strategy for the top of the site. There are just too many unanswered questions for me. So I don't feel I can support this application.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? Councillor Fane.
Thank you, Chair. We have before us the planning balance, and officers are clear in saying that the public benefits outweigh the harm in this instance, 23.7. However, it has to be said, there remains some doubt about the impact of potential flooding on not only neighbouring gardens but neighbouring houses. I'm never prepared to underestimate this. We have seen the real damage that flooding can do to neighbouring houses, and the inconvenience, the cost, the length of time it takes to put it right, regardless of insurance and so on. And we have to be absolutely certain on this point, even in relation to a small site. Now, I accept our drainage officer's assessment of the reports put before him, but there are some outstanding issues. As a 23.6, the proposal fails to demonstrate that no other sites with a lower risk of flooding are reasonably available. But more importantly, perhaps, the drain to the rear would have the capacity to be able to discharge into this at the greenfield rate. That was the question asked by Councillor Khan online. However, the internal drainage board have not been consulted on the application. The suggestion is that an informative could be attached to ensure the applicant engages with them, to ensure that they're aware of their responsibilities and so on. I think the parish council very reasonably made the point this needs to be assured before planning consent is granted, not after planning consent is granted as a result of an informative. I would say there are some other doubts about this, which, as Councillor Sanford said, might have been resolved had the applicant been here to make their case. I'm not, for instance, satisfied that the applicants would be able to gain access to the site. Now, of course, that is a matter for subsequent negotiation with the neighbouring landowner, and not for us as a planning committee. But I think we need to have some degree of certainty before we can approve this sort of development, bearing in mind the potential impact on neighbours. And I am not satisfied to that extent by the proposal currently before us. So it may be a sustainable location. It may be that the provisions will actually improve the flood relief, but we really don't have the evidence to satisfy us on that. And in the light of that doubt, I have to say I shall be voting against this application.
Thank you, Councillor Fane. Okay, Councillor Rickson, do you wish to speak?
Thank you, Chair. I won't. I think I struggle with this application simply, on the issue of surface water. We've had it demonstrated to us by neighbours, in terms of the photos of how much the gardens and the land already suffer from flooding. I'm not fully satisfied with the mitigation measures, and I'm not confident. I'm not confident and convinced that it's been demonstrated that the development will mitigate any impact on neighbouring properties. However, and to finally, to tie in with that, I feel that looking at the amenity created for the proposed development, this is the first, essentially what we have. I don't believe it's good or quality amenity. The fact that if the ground is already floods, then lowering it will mean it's more likely to flood. So actually, it's very poor amenity. Following that logic, that this garden will more likely than not be flooded. And so with that, with those two things in mind, I would not be comfortable in supporting this application.
Thank you. Can't see anybody else wishing to speak. Oh, Councillor Khan, did you want to speak? Councillor Khan?
Yeah, maybe. Yes, very briefly, but I can't vote, but I understand this. The comments about the drain on the surface water drain from the roof, it really depends upon the depth of the drain along the access road to the sawmills. Again, it may be a private drain, so but that's a civil matter for the applicant. It may well be that there is enough fall from the roof to the drain, but we don't have that information about the depth. But we have to assume that is okay if our advice is that it is okay. In terms of the area which is to be excavated, the comment about the existing storage within the soil is a legitimate concern. It's somewhere else mentioned that the land was permeable. The fact that it already floods suggests that it possibly isn't as permeable. The land is gaunt clay there, but it may vary very locally over a few meters by considerable amount. I remember an application on Impington Lane in my ward where an application was refused on flood grounds because they hadn't done an adequate survey and drained from the property to an area where there was permeability to take the water. So it really does depend upon the ground conditions on the site which they propose to excavate, whether there will be adequate that amount of storage capacity or not. I suspect there is, but we haven't been given that evidence, and so it's a concern. We normally would accept the advice of the drainage officer. If I were to vote on this, I would probably be abstaining because I feel we don't have adequate information really to make that judgment. But it is a real concern.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. Right, if there's nobody else wishing to speak on this, I will make my observations. Councillor Wilson makes some very valid points about this area, which I have seen myself when we had very heavy rain in 2019-20 over the winter, or was it 2021? And I remember this site being one of the ones that was itemised as having flooded during that very heavy rainfall. So, and these are the houses at the front. And as I asked the officer, you know, how appropriate is it to install flood mitigation in an area which already floods? And you know, the officer did say that was acceptable, but I have to say I just feel very uneasy about that. And of course, what happens when you put a property there is you get hard surfaces which don't receive the water and absorb it. There's a recharge into drains, which, if they're well designed, take it away, and if they've got somewhere to discharge it to, that's fine. But what I'm concerned about is this in times of, and we know through climate change we're getting much more sudden and intense periods of rain, and that's when you know, we get problems with flooding because the drainage system can't cope with it sufficiently quickly. So what I'm concerned about is the potential impact on the neighbouring properties, which we know we shouldn't increase the risk of flooding to neighbouring properties. And I know this has been dealt with in the report, but what I'm concerned to is recognising that these properties, the front of these properties is in a low place with a physical bund in front of it. So if anything goes wrong with the drainage at the back, these properties would flood because there's nowhere for the water to go, apart from into the houses. So I'm really concerned about this, and I would feel very uneasy approving this. So I think we're going to move to a vote, but first of all, we currently have a recommendation. Just one moment. Let's have the summary from Rebecca, please, first.
Thank you, Chair. Officer recommendation is to approve as set out on page 75 of the report with conditions, with minor amendments to the conditions as drafted, delegated to officers, with that amendment we've already discussed to condition 7 to show that it should be maintained thereafter. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Right, we're now coming to the point where I will seek a proposer and a seconder for the recommendation, which is at 24.1 on page 75 of our agenda. But from the comments that we've had around the table, I'm not sure we're going to get a proposer and seconder. So I can't see any offers on that. So we need to have a proposer and a seconder for an alternative recommendation. And I think, yes. Councillor Williams, would you like to speak?
So I'm happy to propose a recommendation of refusal of the application under the grounds that have been discussed in relation to the surface water flooding and the impact on neighbouring residential properties.
Okay. Would anybody like to second that? Councillor Sanford, thank you. So we have a seconder for refusal on grounds of surface water flooding and impact on neighbouring properties. So let's go to that vote then, please.
Oh, before we vote, we need to draft the reason for refusal.
Okay, righto, yeah.
Can we have 5 minutes?
Yes, okay,
please?
let's have 5 minutes to
Thank you.
to do that. Yes, you need to hang around because we'll need to
assuming-
vote in due course.
Well, I have, but I am not 100% clear because at the minute all I've got is surface water and impact on neighbours. Is that, if I can just clarify, is that you're not happy that the flood risk assessment and drainage strategy is insufficient and therefore it will lead to it, or?
Well, I'm quite happy to work on this because I think we're
Yeah,
all
but I think I need a bit of a lead as to which way the reason for refusal is going. Is it
With Chair and Vice Chair, we're happy to guide you.
I just need the committee to let me know if it's insufficient information, if there's you're not happy with the report, or what it is.
So I'm happy to say my reasons don't believe there is sufficient information to provide safeguards against flooding, and that what is proposed is insufficient to deal with the issues in that location. Which hopefully gives you more of a steer.
Yeah, it does, thank you. If we can have 5
People
minutes.
are nodding, so I'm taking no one's arguing against me on that one.
If we can have 5 minutes, we'll come back with a reason for refusal for you to review.
Let's go offline for 5 minutes while we consider the reasons for refusal. Thank you. So. Thank you. Right, so we're recommencing with the drafted reasons for refusal, I think. Right, okay, thank you. So let's just quietly read that. There's a spare not in there which doesn't, after the would, has failed to demonstrate that the measures would be able to apply. So it's third line, the not after the would needs to be taken out. So it's failed to demonstrate that it would. Not in accordance with various one. Yeah. Okay. There was also a mention of insufficient information. Is that what we're saying by failed to demonstrate? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's what we were saying, that there's not enough information in the flood risk assessment in committee's view, nor the drainage strategy, that shows that the flood compensation measures would mitigate any flooding impact.
Okay. Members, are we happy with that as a reason? We will vote on it, but I just want to check, has anybody got any adjustments that you wish to make to the wording?
I think that covers it. I mean, there's from my view...
Take your hand away.
Oh, sorry, Chair. From my view also, just insufficient amenity, given that in this scheme...
Of the garden
is shown to essentially... is shown...
I don't think I'm going to go with that one, but others might feel it would be reasonable. I think that covers the ground myself. Are you happy with that?
I am, but equally I do think it is fair to say we do need to look at the amenity to future residents, not simply existing residents, and that we feel that there would be unreasonable impacts on the residential amenity due to regular flooding.
So the proposed development...
Sorry, can I just clarify, when you say due to regular flooding, is that the location of the garden within the 1 in 100 flood risk area that is leading to the garden not being of an acceptable standard?
That the drainage solutions aren't in place. Sufficient drainage solutions are not in place, which would mean that the future occupants of the property would not be able to have a fully accessible garden.
I think the concern is it draws from the comment, or aligns with the comment I made about the fact that I'm nervous about flood risk mitigation proposals being made on an area which is already subject to flood risk. And that's the garden of this property. So what Councillor Rickson was talking about was the future amenity of this garden for the people who live there. And so we need to get some wording that encompasses the future amenity of that garden if it is to function as a flood risk mitigation area. And we've got Councillor Ariel Khan with his hand up, as well as, I think, Councillor Martin Khan. Let's take Ariel first. Councillor Ariel Khan.
Sorry, it's just regarding the amenity, considering that the site is current...
Hang on a minute. Are you...
I'm typing, I'm not listening.
Okay, yeah, so...
regarding the garden, considering that currently most of the site is a garden, and also in the 1 in 100 year, 1 in 30 year flood zone, I'm not sure that commenting on the amenity of the new garden also within that zone would.
Are you saying that because the garden
is already in a flood
property
zone of the old property,
already in a 1 in 100
because it's already sort of the garden
zone.
of the old property is already a garden in this circumstance. That's making a new garden in the same area would be not acceptable.
Well, in the description, there is a reference that, you know, sequential sites should be looked at to avoid putting developments in an area which is already at risk of flood. So my concern lies there, but I'll let Rebecca type for a bit, and then I'll ask Councillor Martin Khan what his comment is, so that you can perhaps take that into account as well. Okay, shall we hear from Councillor Martin Khan then, Rebecca? Yeah. Okay, Councillor Martin Khan, do you want to comment?
Yes, actually, I think it must be telepathy between me and my son, because it was much the same issue that I was going to raise. Basically, I was saying that we've got one reason for refusal. We don't want to put a second reason for refusal which won't stand, because that could actually cause us problems if it went to appeal. I'm just wondering for advice from the planning officers whether the condition, the possibility there might be slightly more flooding of the garden affecting amenity would be a sound reason for refusal, or whether that's really is not sufficiently strong that it might actually cause problems. Just to their advice, it's a sort of tactical advice.
So let's check that. Rebecca, do we ask you or do we ask Vanessa? Vanessa. Let's ask Vanessa. Over to you, Vanessa. So I think, is this reason as drafted sufficient as of itself?
I consider the reason as drafted by Rebecca is sufficient.
Okay. So, okay, well, let's have a look then at what's being proposed. Okay, so can we just scroll down a wee bit so we can see the top one as well?
Well, the top one I haven't adjusted. The top one is as it was before. So I've.
Okay, that's fine. Just so that we can see them both together. We're looking at these as alternatives, are we?
No, that's what I was just trying to explain.
Okay.
So top one I've left as it was, in that there's insufficient information to show that it's not going to impact in terms of flooding on the neighbouring properties. And then I think the second reason for refusal that you're referring to is that because of the location of the amenity space within the flood risk event area, that would fail to provide acceptable amenity space for the future occupiers.
Okay, that sounds reasonable. That sounds reasonable. Okay, right. So
I might need to just check which of the flood risk areas the garden's in. I think it's the 1 in 100.
I think it's 1 in 100.
And 1 in 30.
1 in 100 is the one, the very pale.
No, that's 1 in 1,000 is the very pale.
No.
1 in 100 is the middle one, and 1 in 30 is the darker one. So
no, 1 in 30 is the first one, the darkest one. Yeah. 1 in 100 is the next.
Yeah, that's what I was just saying, except I did it in the other order.
And the other bit is 1 in 1,000.
So I think it's 1 in 30 and 1 in 100 to be safe, because I think it's in both.
Okay, right. Yeah, okay. Right, okay. So can I take those both together? Are members happy? Do I need to vote on these? Are we happy that those are the reasons we'd like to use? Can I just take that by affirmation?
Can I just say, actually, I think that it would be better to only have the previous. I think the previous reasons for refusal were.
Sorry, the previous what?
The previous
reason for refusal at the top.
Yes, I think it's. I think that the second reason is extraneous and not necessary. I don't think it's. In my view, it'll be better to only have the first.
I think both are fine. They cover different things. The one is the first, we haven't got enough information, and the second one says you're putting a garden in an area which is subject to flooding, which affects the amenity of the proposed dwelling. They're two different things. So for my money, I think both of these reasons make sense, and Vanessa agreed that they are both acceptable.
Is legal happy that it's a reason that is likely to
Are you happy with the
pass
second
appeal?
reason?
I'm happy to put, do you want to put the reasons for a vote?
We can, yes. So can we
I
put the reasons?
I'm happy to agree by affirmation.
Ariel, let's just put the reasons for refusal to the vote. Now, do you want to take these separately, the two reasons, or do you want to take them all as one? I think we'll take them all as one, and if you don't agree with them, then you'd have to...
I would have said separately.
Separately? Okay, right, let's do it. So, can we vote for the first reason at the top of that slide, which broadly deals with insufficient information? So, can we vote for that? So, if you wish to vote for that, that's green. If you wish to vote against, that's red. And if you want to abstain, it's yellow. Okay, so that's all of us have voted in favour of option one. Sorry, the first reason. Great. So that's 9. The second reason, can we vote for... Have you cleared the screen?
I've just cleared the screen. I'm just setting up the second vote for you.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. Tell us when it's ready. Thank you very much. So, proposer Heather Williams and Councillor Sandford are seconding it.
Did we have a proposal seconder for the first one?
Just said you had. Yeah. Yes, you were doing that for the first one as well, weren't you? Yeah. Both. Yes. Great. So,
ready?
We haven't got the vote in front of us.
Oh yes, you're ready to vote. Sorry.
Yeah, we're ready to vote now. Thank you. So, Councillor Heather Williams proposed both these options, and Councillor Sandford seconded both.
Reason 2.
This is, it's called reason 1, but it's, so the second one has, we're missing one vote. We had 9 last time. Okay, 8 and 1, so that's carried. So we've got 8 and 1 on the second vote. Second reason, sorry. Lovely. Okay, thank you very much, Hobbs. So we've got those reasons for refusal. So now I propose we go to the vote on the application, which was the new proposal was to refuse this application. So if you agree with refusal, press green. If you don't agree with refusal, press red, and if you wish to abstain, press yellow. Okay, so that's carried unanimously, 9-0. Okay, so that's refused. Members, thank you very much for that complicated stuff. Okay. Okay, so that's the end of the substantive applications on the agenda. So, members of the public, you can stay and listen to the rest of it, but it doesn't affect applications in your area. So, lovely to see you. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you. Councillor Heather Williams.
It was just for agenda item 7. One of the applications is within proximity to a relative of my husband, so I'm going to leave the chamber. But I just want to say Merry Christmas to everybody. It's our last committee chair.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Okay, so let's move on then. Thank you. So we're now down to 8. So thank you, members, for your perseverance with that one. Okay, so we now move on to appeals, which starts on page 83 of our agenda. And remember, we direct really any questions on this to Rebecca by email, but this is just to give you a summary of them. So, Rebecca, did you want to make any introduction?
I just to note that we have got the Appendix 4 title changed. So it says appeals awaiting decision from the inspectorate.
Thank you.
And in terms of Appendix 3A, the 2 local inquiries that are noted there, one was last week and one's this week. So they have happened. Apart from that, if anybody has any questions, please do raise with me directly on an email and I'll come back to everybody. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Rebecca. So, can I just also say thank you to our compliance officers for following up on these, which are so very complicated and take a long time to resolve. So we appreciate their time and dedication on these matters. Thank you. Right. Just bear with me a moment. So the next meeting of the Planning Committee will be the 14th of January. So we look forward to seeing you all there. And with that, I'm going to close the committee, but could you remain with us for a moment? And if you